Chapter 592 Beguiling One. Even though he didn't know whether it was a supernatural occurrence or not, one thing was for sure: Zhongsha's judgment was spot on. For this, he was extremely awed with the other party's foresight. In the past, he had been reveling in his position as the #1 genius of Myriad Kingdom Alliance, and he thought that there was no one in the world who could best him. But after seeing this young man, he realized that he was still far from matching up to true geniuses. Returning back to the group, Ruo Huan Gongzi respectfully clasped his fist and asked, "Zhongsha, what do I do now?" "Sit down and eat." Zhong Xian gestured. Ruo Huan Gongzi was dumbstruck. "You got me to pour meat soup over the other party to provoke him, going to such an extent. I thought that you would have some incredible plan in mind, and yet you're asking me to eat now? Your match is about to start, and you'll only have the strength to fight once you're full. Without energy, how do you expect to emerge victorious against your opponent?" Zhong Xian rolled his eyes. There was only an hour of resting time, and it was about to come to an end. If he didn't hurry, the tournament was going to resume. All right. With no other better idea in mind, Ruo Huan Gongzi could only follow the other party's instruction. He sat down and began to eat ravenously. The dinner prepared by the Alliance head residents was indeed sumptuous. Soon, they were full, and by then, the tournament was already about to start. Memorize the contents on it. You just have to recite it later on. Just as Ruo Huan Gongzi was still perplexed as to how he should deal with Qin Lei, Zhongsha passed a piece of white paper to him. It was filled with scribblings that were written by the other party during the meal just a moment ago. Surprised, he quickly swept through the contents of the paper, and his eyes immediately widened. "Zhongsha, do I really have to say this?" "UN." Zhong Xian nodded affirmatively. Ruo Huan Gongzi's vision immediately darkened, and he nearly broke down in tears. "Big brother, you are pushing me off a cliff here. Are you that unhappy that I wasn't beaten up just now? If I were to say what is on the paper, that fellow would probably forfeit his candidature just so that he could strangle me to death. Stop wasting time idling and quickly memorize it. Remember, you must recite it word for word. Otherwise, I can't guarantee your victory." Seeing Ruo Huan Gongzi wallowing in his sorrow, Zhongsha urged him with a frown. Tears glittered in Ruo Huan Gongzi's eyes. If only he'd known earlier, he would have never asked Zhong Xian for help. At this moment, it felt as though he was on board the ship of a pirate, and there was no backing out now. All right. Gritting his teeth, Ruo Huan Gongzi quickly started memorizing the contents on the paper. Soon after he was done, a gong sounded, and Hongsha's deep voice reverberated through the entire square. The tournament resumes. Would the participating master teachers come onto the stage? Everyone replied and hurried up. On the round stage, Ruo Huan Gongzi took a deep breath before walking over to the dueling stage labeled A. For a moment, his silhouette looked slightly valiant. Knowing that it was too late for second thoughts, he had decided to simply follow Zhongsha's instructions. If death was what that awaited him, so be it. Humph. Qin Lei also walked toward dueling stage A as well. Recalling how the other party provoked him previously, his rage immediately surged. Seeing that all participants were on their respective stages, Hongsha announced, "The match begins. Start discussing the format of the duel. Since White Alio's sect was first place in the previous tournament, the right of choice is in my hand." Harumphing coldly, Qin Lei turned at the detestable young man before him and said, "I choose." "It's indeed a formidable technique, but it's a pity that your mastery is still lacking. I could see a total of 4 flaws. First, having barely reached Transcendent Mortal 4 Dan, your Zhenqi isn't sufficiently pure yet. Even though your movements seem to be in place, you're lacking the essence of the technique. Second, the core of the 7 Forsaken Fist is Forsaken Heart, Forsaken Emotions, Forsaken Intent, Forsaken Benevolence, Forsaken Fate, Forsaken Thoughts, and Forsaken Desires. However, you aren't able to meet even a single one of these notions. Given that your movements and your intent are at odds, no matter how much you practice the technique, it will be nothing more than an empty shell." Third. Fourth. Soon, Qin Lei finished listing out the flaws in Ruo Huan Gongzi's technique. Every single point of his stabbed straight into the vitals. There was no one who wouldn't lose his confidence upon hearing too much of such words. Incredible. With just a single look, he was able to point out the 4 main flaws behind the technique. As expected of one of the strongest contenders for the champion seat, he's indeed fearsome. I was looking intently at Ruo Huangongzi's movements too, but I wasn't able to see a single problem about it. Upon hearing Qin Lei's words, a huge commotion raked up among the crowd below. Nearly everyone present here was a master teacher or an expert, and they possessed a sharp eye of such things as well. The technique Ruo Huangongzi executed felt wholesome, and with just a single look, it was clear that he had devoted many years of his time into it. But even so, Qin Lei was still able to easily list out 4 major problems. His eye of discernment wasn't inferior to even some half 5-star master teachers. Seems like it'll be hard for Ruo Huangongzi to win in this round. I had been paying close attention to Qin Lei's execution, but I wasn't even able to tell what battle technique he was executing. I am also unable to make sense out of it. Everyone discussed with hushed voices as they looked toward the stage, curious as to how Ruo Huangongzi would deal with this situation. With a cold smirk on his face, Qin Lei was also staring at Ruo Huangongzi intently. The battle technique he had just executed had come from some ancient ruins. Even Hong She might not be able to recognize it, needless to say this fellow. Thus, he was confident that he would win this match. It's your turn. If you can't say anything constructive, you should just admit defeat. Seeing the conflicted expression on Ruo Huangongzi, Qin Lei harumphed. At this moment, Ruo Huangongzi seemed to have come to a major decision and gritted his teeth. If I'm not mistaken, there's something wrong with your brain. What? The square fell deathly silent instantaneously. Wasn't it a duel in pointing out flaws in battle techniques? When did it become an insulting competition instead? What did you say? Hearing those words, Qin Lei immediately exploded in rage. Despite not having completed nourishing your soul, you forcefully tried to achieve a breakthrough to consonant spirit realm and drove your zhenqi into your head. And in that attempt, both your soul and your brain are wounded. Am I mistaken about that? Ruo Huangongzi said. Qin Lei frowned. After sect leader Bai Kaiji, who was also his teacher, was killed, he understood the bad state the sect was in and panicked. Thus, he forcefully tried to advance to consonant spirit realm. In that process, one's zhenqi had to be driven into one's head to open up the Helaying acupoint. Only with the opening with this acupoint can one make the leap to become a consonant spirit realm expert. But Qin Lei wasn't ready yet then. The head was a vulnerable region, and yet, he willfully drove his zhenqi into his, thus causing significant damage to his soul and brain. As a result, he was suffering from splitting headache whenever night falls. But he had never told this matter to anyone, even the elders of the sect, for fear of worrying them. How did the other party manage to see through this? Not only so, there are innumerable traumas from cultivating incorrectly all over your body. For the sake of impressing others in this tournament, you even cultivated a battle technique of unknown origin. If I'm not mistaken, to master it, you would need 32 acupoints all over your body to resonate in harmony, right? This requirement in itself isn't a problem. Most battle techniques have such demands from the cultivator. However, this battle technique sought to connect the Baihe and the Yongquan acupoints. The former pulls in the clear aura of the sky, whereas the latter absorbs the turbid aura of the earth. As the two of them collide, an intangible cage is formed, locking your soul firmly into your body. In other words, without any fortuitous encounter, it's impossible for you to reach consonant spirit realm. If you don't believe my words, you can try driving your zhenqi into your Bihai acupoint. If you feel a numbing sensation there, it means that your soul has already started declining. Alternatively, you can also try your Qingjin acupoint. If you feel an itch, it means that the internal of your body has grown oddly stiff, and it is nothing more than a cage at this point. Other people cultivate in hopes of advancing to higher realms, and yet, you do so only to seal your path of progress. Isn't there something really wrong with your head? Since Ruo Huangongzi had already made up his mind, he tossed aside his hesitation and recited everything that Zhongsha had him say. In any case, he couldn't understand the other party's battle technique. At this rate, he would lose anyway. Thus, he decided to take the gamble, At the very least, there was a ray of hope down this path. After he was done, he thought the other party would immediately rush forward to pummel him up or insult him. But shockingly, the other party remained bizarrely motionless. It was as if he had met with something incredulous, leaving his face pale with shock. Could it be that I was spot on? Gedung. Ruo Huangong's heart skipped a beat. When he saw the content of the note, he thought that it was just nonsense Zhongshe made up on the spot. If he were to recite it, the other party would surely rush up to kill him. Never had he entertained the thought that it would actually be true. The other party had barely raised his hands back then, and Zhongshe was able to tell all of this. Of course, if you don't believe me, you can continue trying for consonant spirit realm. You'll feel a surge of powerlessness, or perhaps, your zhenqi, suppressed by some sort of power, might even be unable to enter your head. Ruo Huangong's eyes lit up, and endless confidence seemed to surge into him at this instant. Ignoring the other party's shocked expression, he continued, despite being a 4-star pinnacle master teacher, you cultivated a battle technique blindly without analyzing its true nature, and yet, you still dare to challenge me to a comprehension of cultivation duel. How much more arrogant can you get? Qin Lei's body swayed weakly as though it had lost its backbone. He had just tried out everything that the other party had said, and it turned out that the other party was completely spot on. Could it be that he had really cultivated incorrectly? To us so greatly despite being a master teacher, how was he supposed to guide others then? This wasn't only a loss in this duel, this was a loss for him as a master teacher as well. Alright, I'll stop here. As a fellow master teacher, I can tell you this. There's still a way to resolve your problem at this point, but the longer you delay it, the harder it'll be for you to make a full recovery. Ruo Huangongzi waved his hands. I'm a magnanimous person, so as long as you admit your defeat, I'll impart you the solution to your problem. Chapter 593 Beguiling 2 Beneath the Stage. Zhongshe, this is what that was on your note. You managed to discern this much. Pavilion Master Kang and the others stared at the young man before them with widened eyes. He was well aware of his own student's capability. He couldn't even tell what battle technique Qin Lei executed previously, and yet, his disciple was able to logically deduce facts that left the entire crowd stumped. Unless Zhongshe was involved, there was no way his disciple could be capable of this. That's right, Zhongxian admitted. But Qin Shi had only driven his zhenqi and lifted his palm. How in the world were you able to discern so much? Even after hearing the words of affirmation from the person in question, the crowd still found the matter too difficult to believe. Ruo Huangongzi did manage to provoke Qin Lei by pouring meat soup on him, but in the end, a fight didn't break out, and both sides hardly made any moves. Yet, to make such an in-depth analysis under such circumstances, are you for real? What kind of eye of discernment is this? But what kind of battle technique did Qin Lei cultivate? To think that there would actually be a battle technique in the world that would lock one's soul and prevent one from achieving a breakthrough. Su Shi couldn't help but express his shock. A 4-star pinnacle master teacher possessed astute senses surpassing that of ordinary cultivators. How could Qin Lei possibly cultivate a battle technique that would seal his soul without realizing it himself? I've no idea as well. Zhongxian shook his head. You don't know? Then. Everyone frowned. If you don't know what battle technique it is, how do you know what kind of sensation would be induced by stimulating the respective acupoints? The Bihai acupoint corresponds to the soul, whereas the Qingjin acupoint is the point connecting the body to the soul. These were common facts that all transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle experts know of. Under normal circumstances, the triggering of these acupoints with zhenqi should nourish one's souls. Given that such anomalies happened, it would be hard to believe that there was nothing wrong with the other party. But, if you don't even know what battle technique the other party cultivated, how in the world do you know that his Qingjin acupoint is closed and his soul is wounded? It's a lie. Zhongxian replied calmly. A lie. Everyone froze. The cultivators of the White Alios sect cultivates the White Alios zhenqi, which is a type of zhenqi possessing yang attribute. Back then, when Bai Kaiji came to attack my residence, my teacher told me about it. Zhongxian said. Yuan. Pavilion Master Kang and the others nodded their heads. The White Alios formula that most members in the White Alios sect cultivated was indeed a yang attribute cultivation technique. Upon mastering it, one's attacks would be augmented with immense destructive force. Having suffered a tragic defeat against them, they went to investigate the other party, so they were well aware of the basic information surrounding them. The food provided by the Alliance head residents consists mainly of food that seeks to revitalize, such as spirit beast meat and medicinal herbs. Am I right about that? Zhong Xian asked. In truth, the Alliance head residents also provided the same food to the members of the other sects and empires as well. Spirit beast meat, savage beast meat, and even precious medicinal herbs rich in spiritual energy were used in the cooking so as to nourish and energize the exhausted participants. That's right. Zhao Feiwu nodded her head. She was involved in the choosing of the ingredients for the food, so she was well aware of this matter. What would happen if a cultivator practicing a yang attribute cultivation technique consumes extremely nourishing food? Zhong Xian asked. His cells will become lively, and his flow of zhenqi would hasten. Pavilion Master Kang replied. It had a similar effect to consuming stimulant. After all, if a person rich in hot energy were to consume nourishing food, his body would surely be overflowing with energy, resulting in physical restlessness. Just that, wouldn't that simply put him in a better condition for battle? Under normal circumstances, it would only induce positive effects to the cultivator. However, you've neglected an ingredient used in the brewing of the soup. If I'm not mistaken, there is jade yin grass, Zhong Xian said. There's indeed jade yin grass. Even though that grass is known for its cold yin properties, it has the effect of cooling one down and boosting one's cognitive capacity. On top of that, it is a famous delicacy as well. Halfway through her words, Zhao Feiwu suddenly realized something, and her eyes widened. It's indeed a famous medicinal herb, but the problem lies exactly with its cold yin properties. Given that we are still in the midst of the tournament, Qin Lei is likely to be filled with excitement. On top of that, his yang zhenqi and the nourishing food he had consumed left him practically brimming with energy. And at such a moment, a soup containing yin energy was poured over him. I believe even if I don't explain this, you should understand the consequences of the matter. Zhong Xian smiled. The abrupt collision of yin and yang, to protect itself, the body would automatically shut its acupoint. If all of his acupoints are closed, that explains why his soul is locked in his body. Why you actually designed this scenario? Coming to a realization, the faces of Pavilion Master Kang, Su Shi, and the others paled in frenzy. They thought that Zhong Shi had incredible capability to be able to analyze so much regarding Qin Lei. They didn't expect that it was all a huge ploy set up to trap Qin Lei from the initial pouring of the soup. Not only was each chain of the plan linked tightly to the next, leaving little room for failure, there was also very little evidence to trace back the matter. If Zhong Shi hadn't explained the matter, they would have probably never realized it. As the person standing in the center of everything, Qin Lei was unlikely to be any wiser than them. His loss was already fixed from the moment Zhong Shi's help was engaged. This was way too formidable. I just happened to think of it. Zhong Xian nodded in response. In truth, the entire plan lay upon a single fact: Qin Lei had attempted to achieve a breakthrough to consonant spirit realm and failed, causing his soul to be damaged. Without this laying the foundation for all the latter theories, it would be impossible to convince the other party of this hoax. This was how humans worked, as well as a common ploy used by fortune tellers. With a single fact to set the foundation, the parts that came afterward would seem much more believable. Not to mention, it was based on solid theories known by all 4-star pinnacle master teachers. On the contrary, it would be hard for him not to believe those words instead. Since it's a lie, then, Ruohuan said that he has a solution. Suddenly, Pavilion Master Kang recalled what Ruohuan Gongzi had just said, and a premonition suddenly struck him. If this was all a lie, what kind of solution could Ruohuan Gongzi offer? Just watch on. Zhong Xian gestured to the stage. The group hurriedly turned their sights over. At this moment, Qin Lei, after a long internal struggle, sighed deeply and said, "I admit my defeat. I beseech you to impart me the solution to my problem." He was already in the top 16. Even if he were to fail now, he could still vie for the last 2 placing of the top 10. But if his problem wasn't resolved, his cultivation would be unable to advance any further. Just the thought of it was completely unacceptable to him. Weighing the pros and cons, he decided to admit defeat and accept the other party's guidance. In any case, it was just a matter of time before he killed this fellow. What harm was there to give a little glee to a dying man? Admit defeat. Qinsha actually admitted defeat. It seems like Ruo Huangongzi's words were spot on. Impressive. We weren't even able to recognize the battle technique, and yet he had managed to see through even the flaws in Qinsha's cultivation. When did Ruo Huangongzi become so impressive? I think I saw him consulting Zhongsha just a moment ago. Do you think that it's possible that this is all Zhongsha's doing? Qin Lei admitting defeat was huge news that generated an enormous uproar amongst the crowd. One must know that there was a huge disparity in the capability between Ruo Huangongzi and Qin Lei. This huge reversal had sparked thoughts in the minds of many. Many of them had seen Ruo Huangongzi seeking Zhongsha's pointers during the break previously. Since you've admitted defeat, I'll help you then. Hearing the other party admit his defeat, Ruo Huangongzi began trembling in agitation, knowing that he had gotten into the top 8. Actually, the solution is simple. Your Qinjin acupoint is only sealed temporarily due to some external stimulus. As long as you rest well tonight, you'll be fine tomorrow. Rest well tonight? Qin Lei widened his eyes in shock. His vision went dark, and a mini explosion occurred in his head. If he still couldn't tell that he had been played a fool, he would be unbefitting as a 4-star pinnacle master teacher. I'll kill you. Howling furiously, he prepared to charge over angrily. All right, a loss is a loss. On top of knowledge and physical strength, the Master Teacher Tournament also seeks to assess one's adaptability. It's due to your own ignorance that you were deceived. You shouldn't pin the blame on anyone else. Hongsha flicked his sleeves, and Qin Lei immediately stopped with a stagger. Given that Qin Lei had willingly admitted defeat after being duped, there was no one he could blame for it. Since even Hongsha was speaking up, Qin Lei knew that there was nothing else he could do at this point. His teeth bit tightly on his lips out of rage, and fresh blood regurgitated at the back of his throat, threatening to spill at any moment. What the heck was this? He had marched onto the stage so confidently, only to be fooled by someone else, and not to mention, he actually willingly admitted defeat. Damn it. Jun Ruohuan, if I can't kill you, I'll abandon my name. Qin Lei howled furiously inside. The results were out. Ruo Huangongzi had successfully advanced to the next round. As soon as he got off the stage, he immediately turned to look at Zhongsha in agitation. In truth, when he first read the content on the paper, he thought that he would surely be beaten to death. He never thought that he would actually succeed. Top 8 of the Master Teacher Tournament. This was a result he never thought would be possible. Thank you, Zhongsha. He clasped his fist respectfully. It was still a while ago that he still tried to compete with this young man over everything. But at this point, such a notion vanished completely from his mind. This fellow may seem a little dense on the surface, but if one were to try to compete with him, one would only end up utterly defeated. There's no need to stand on ceremony. Given how badly Qinsha was scammed, he will surely apply for a life-and-death duel against you. For now, you should think of how you would face him first. Zhong Xian said. Yuan. Ruo Huangongzi nodded in response. If 2 master teachers had an irreconcilable grudge, they could apply for a life-and-death duel to resolve the matter once and for all. Given how badly Qin Lei was humiliated before such a huge crowd, there was a good chance that he would apply for one right after the tournament. If the headquarters were to give their consent, Ruo Huangongzi would have to face him. But still, the headquarters rarely consented to life-and-death duels unless in extreme situations. And even if it did, Ruo Huangongzi wouldn't necessarily lose to the other party. In truth, the paper that Zhongsha gave him contained major flaws on the other party's cultivation and battle techniques, and he had already memorized them all. As such, it was impossible to tell who would be the one destroyed in a life-and-death duel. Putting aside the matter, Ruo Huangongzi warned with a grave expression, Zhongsha, your opponent for this round is Wei Changqing of the Zijin sect. I've heard that this fellow is extremely formidable, so you must be careful later on. The lots were only drawn at the initial phase, and the matching would follow by a certain fixed format afterward. The person Zhongshe would face was Wei Changqing, a formidable genius of the Zijin sect. You've heard of him? Zhongxian asked curiously. Even though he's not in the top 10 of the list of contenders, it doesn't mean that he's incapable. His greatest flaw is only his lacking cultivation. Just like you, he's a transcendent mortal 3-dan pinnacle cultivator. To be able to get into the top 16 despite his lacking cultivation, I'm sure you can imagine how talented he is in other aspect. Ruo Huangong's eyebrows shot up. I spectated his previous match, and he used his supporting occupation as a blacksmith to force his opponent to admit his defeat. Yuan. Zhongxian nodded. He had seen the match too, and honestly speaking, that fellow was indeed impressive. Without true capability, it was nigh impossible for a transcendent mortal 3-dan pinnacle to triumph over a transcendent mortal 4-dan in smithing. As smithing wasn't one of Zhongxian's supporting occupations, it would be impossible for the other party to challenge him in this field. But if the other party were to challenge him in a duel of pill forging, that may prove to be a little troublesome. Chapter 594, Duel of Beast Taming. While he was a 4-star apothecary, he had only gotten his emblem through pill discourse. Pill forging was still impossible for him. In a match of pill forging, Zhongshe, being unable to forge anything at all, would surely lose tragically. But still, given that pill forging required significant preparation, it was unlikely to appear in the master-teacher tournament. In any case, you just have to know that he is impressive in his supporting occupations, and you shouldn't accept any duel of that sort. Ruo Huangongzi advised. Wei Changqing's cultivation was lacking, but he excelled in his supporting occupations. Knowing this, Zhongxian could use his right to reject a proposed dueling format once to vie for better conditions for himself. While the Myriad Kingdom Alliance group was discussing this issue, an air of desolation seemed to be floating around the group from Zijin sect. That Zhongshe has been barging his way through every single obstacle with astounding means. I fear that there's very little hope for you, an elder from Zijin sect lamented with a deep frown etched on his forehead. That monster seems to possess no weakness at all. How are we supposed to compete with him? No one here thought well of their own participant. If it was anyone else, even if the person was Luo Xian, they would surely give it their all. But against that freak, they simply couldn't see any hope at all, and a wave of helplessness overwhelmed them. I can't help but admit that he's nearly flawless as a master teacher too, but I find it hard to believe that his astounding capabilities could extend to his supporting occupations too. Wei Changqing narrowed his eyes. He specialized in his supporting occupations, and he had absolute confidence in that field. I've had someone look into it, and his 4 main supporting occupations are namely 5-star appraiser, 4-star formation master, 4-star physician, and 4-star beast tamer. Wei Changqing lifted up his fingers and counted. My 4 supporting occupations are 4-star blacksmith, 4-star tea master, 4-star painter, and 4-star beast tamer. The only common supporting occupation we have is beast taming, but this is more than sufficient. More than sufficient? It can't be that you intend to challenge him in beast taming? The elders of the sect glanced at one another. Beast taming is an extremely troublesome process. If one wished to compete in the field of supporting occupation, both competitors must share the same supporting occupation. Otherwise, if only one side was learned in the field, there would be no point to the duel at all. While Zhongxian did have other supporting occupations such as apothecary and painter, they hadn't reached 4-star yet. As such, the only viable option was beast taming. Unaware of the rules, Zhongxian was still worrying over the latter challenging him to a duel of pill forging. However, beast taming required one to be close to a spirit beast, and sometimes, this process could take several years. On the other hand, the duel for the master-teacher tournament had to be completed within an incense's time. There was a clear lack of time for this. Don't worry, I've an idea in mind. In the field of beast taming, I'll never lose out to him. A gleam flashed across Wei Changqing's eyes. It's good that you're confident, but make sure not to force yourself. Indeed. Even if you were to lose, do be polite to the other party. We'll make sure to reward you greatly when we return back to our sec. Otherwise, you might as well admit defeat now. Our sect will at least be able to retain its pride. None of the elders had much faith in him. Wei Changqing's eyes twitched uncontrollably. Are you on my side or Zhongshen's side? It's one thing for you not to support me, but to actually advise me to admit defeat. Just the thought of it left him speechless. Humph, Zhongshen. I'll defeat you so as to shut these old fogies up. Gritting his teeth, Wei Changqing howled frenziedly within. Clenching his fists tightly, he proceeded to the stage. This match was no longer about the top 10 placing anymore. What was at stake was his dignity. If he wished to retain his dignity, he would have to defeat Zhongshe and prove his capability. On the stage labeled D, looking at the young man opposite to him, Wei Changqing gritted his teeth tightly. Seeing the other party's hostile gesture, Zhongshen was stumped. It should be his first time meeting the other party. Why did the other party look as though he had killed his father and claimed his wife? Perplexed, Zhongshen tried asking, have we met before? We have never met before. But I'm determined to defeat you, Wei Changqing declared furiously. I decide to challenge you to a duel in our supporting occupation, that is beast taming. Do you dare to accept the duel? Beast taming? Not expecting the other party to propose such a dueling format, Zhongshen frowned. How would this match go? Simple. Since you're a 4-star beast tamer, you would surely have your own tamed beast. Why don't we call our tamed beasts over, and we'll give one another an incense's time to interact with each other's tamed beast. Whoever commands the greater degree of loyalty from the other party's tamed beast will be deemed the winner, Wei Changqing said. Exchange tamed beasts to tame for an incense's time. Are you certain about it? Zhongshen looked at the other party with a bizarre expression. The other party's intent was clear. I'll tame your tamed beast while you tame mine. Whoever manages to induce more loyalty from the other party's tamed beast will be the victor. This was a common competition format between beast tamers. Just that, this fellow really wanted to compete with him in beast taming? Of course. Wei Changqing sneered coldly. Why? To think that the most popular contender for the champion seat would actually fear my beast taming ability. Are you that fearful of me? All right then. Seeing that the other party was serious in his proposed duel format, Zhongshen nodded in agreement. Compete with Zhongshe in beast taming? Is that fellow mad? Hearing the content of the duel, Zhao Feiwu stared at the fool with a gaze brimming with sympathy. You must be unaware that Zhongshe only took 2 breaths to tame the demon-sank beast. To actually challenge him to this. Are you that desperate to find some excitement in your dull life? I've seen people with suicidal tendencies, but you seem to top the list. The mouths of Pavilion Master Kang and the others twitched. Even though they had never witnessed Zhongshe taming a beast, they had heard of it from Hall Master Han Chong of the Beast Hall personally on the day of the selection round. A spirit beast which even he was unable to tame despite years of effort, Zhongshe actually managed to turn it into a loyal guard for his residents. Are you certain that you can win? Seems like this will be an interesting match to watch. Wei Changqing is a famous genius beast tamer, and I've heard that he has once participated in a beast taming competition and became the champion. I've heard of the same as well. Zhongshe really shouldn't have accepted this challenge. Unlike the other duels, a duel of beast taming won't be just about one's own capability. One would have to possess sufficient resources in one's possession as well. It might be hard for him to advance to the top 8. Contrary to Zhao Feiwu and the group's sympathetic expression, the other master teachers, ignorant of Zhongshen's astounding feats, had a grave expression on their faces. Beast taming is an expensive occupation which demands one to have sufficient treasures in one's possession. Otherwise, if one couldn't even attract the spirit beast's attention, how could one possibly induce loyalty in the latter? The Myriad Kingdom Alliance was clearly much poorer than the Zijin sect. In terms of beast taming, the latter was in an advantageous position. Look, the both of them have summoned their tamed beasts over. Amidst discussions from the crowd, a huge gust of wind suddenly blew in the air above them. 2 gigantic spirit beasts flew over and landed on the stage. They were Demon Sank Beast and Wei Changqing's tamed beast. Zhongshen glanced over. The other party's tamed beast was a gigantic Beryline spirit beast. It was at transcendent mortal 4 Dan primary stage, far weaker than demon sank beast. This is your tamed beast. Wei Changqing had thought that the other party's tamed beast would be around the same cultivation realm as his, and he was confident in winning significant loyalty from it. Who knew that the other party's tamed beast would turn out to be so powerful? Wei Changqing's face immediately collapsed, and tears brimmed in his eyes. It would be amazing if a normal transcendent mortal 3 Dan pinnacle expert could tame a transcendent mortal 4 Dan spirit beast. And yet, you actually tamed a consonant spirit realm fellow? How in the world did you do it? Feel free to go first. I'm in no hurry. Zhong Xian gestured. After which, he turned to Demon Sank Beast and said, Wei Shi over here hopes to tame you, so do cooperate with him. Roar! Demon Sank Beast was stunned for a moment. It twisted its gigantic head to the young man not too far away, and in an instant, the young man felt a huge pressure on his soul. It was as if his soul was placed into a furnace which would burn him into cinders. Feeling the immense pressure on him, Wei Changqing's mouth twitched. His body couldn't help but shudder, and he nearly spurted blood. This. If I can't even get near to it, how in the world can I tame it? Flicking his wrist, Wei Changqing took out a jade bottle and said, Brother Demon Sank, this is the blood essence of a transcendent mortal 5 Dan spirit beast that I prepared for you. May I know if you would be interested in it? Prying the jade bottle open, a dense concentration of spiritual energy immediately surged into the surrounding. Blood essence of a transcendent mortal 5 Dan spirit beast. What a generous offer. Indeed. This single bottle is probably worth a minimum of a dozen middle-tier spirit stones. You're giving a very conservative estimate. Chances are it would be much higher than that. There's no spirit beast who wouldn't be tempted by that. Zhongshe is really in trouble this time round. Seems like Wei Changqing came prepared. Seeing the generous offer, a huge commotion broke out below. The blood essence of a stronger spirit beast posed irresistible attraction to a weaker spirit beast. There were countless spirit beasts who would submit before such a treasure. It was no wonder Wei Changqing dared to challenge Zhongshe to such a duel. It seemed like he came prepared. If Zhongshe couldn't offer anything more valuable than that, he would surely lose this match. Roar! Seeing the transcendent mortal 5 Dan spirit beast blood essence, Demon Sank Beast's eyes lit up. It immediately lifted its thick claws and snatched the jade bottle over. Not expecting the other party to simply snatch the blood essence over, Wei Changqing panicked, there's no need to hurry. As long as you promise to become my friend, I'll give it to you. Why you? What are you doing? The heck? He thought that he would surely win the other party's goodwill with the spirit beast blood essence in hand. Who knew that before a shadow would come crashing down on him before he was done speaking? Before he realized it, he was already beneath the other party's claws. You return my spirit beast blood essence. Wei Changqing roared furiously, but before he was done with his words, he felt the force of the claw pressing down on him intensifying. Putong! An indentation appeared on the stage, and Wei Changqing was pushed into the ground. Wei Changqing was on the verge of tears. No matter what, he was a 4-star master teacher, as well as a respected beast tamer. To be smashed into the ground by a spirit beast. The stifled feeling in his heart left him extremely frustrated and frenzied. Listen to me. As long as you let me go, I have better things to offer you. Pu. But just like before, the pressure pushing down on him was hiked up yet another notch before he was done speaking. Snap. His ribcage creaked, and a mouthful of fresh blood spurted from his mouth. In the next instant, he suddenly felt an ache on his finger. His storage ring had been taken away by the gigantic spirit beast on top of him. Wei Changqing was about to go insane. No matter what, you're a consonant spirit realm spirit beast, and you already possess some degree of intelligence. Shouldn't you try to uphold your dignity rather than snatch whatever you want as though a willful child? While he was spewing blood, he heard the demon Sank Beast above him howl. Following which, with a tinge of peculiarity, Zhongshe's voice sounded, My demon Sank Beast says that as long as you submit to it and become its tamed human, it will return your storage ring to you. Submit? Tamed human? Pu. Wei Changqing's vision went dark. Big brother, I'm here to tame your spirit beast, not to have your spirit beast tame me. Chapter 595. What are you feigning death for? Back on Coke's Ridge, the demon-sank beast had been a bandit of the region. Even the Alliance head residents and the Beast Hall were unable to do anything about it. Those who dared challenge it were either killed or pummeled and thrown to some remote corner of the world. Yet, this fellow actually dared to try and tame it. He could be considered lucky to have survived until now. Roar. Waving the spirit beast blood essence and storage ring with its claws, demon-sank beast roared once more. Cough cough. Zhongxian coughed before translating sheepishly, "It wants you to drink the spirit beast blood essence." As demon-sank beast was his tamed beast, he could communicate with it directly through his soul even if he didn't comprehend beast language. It wasn't too difficult for him to understand such simple expressions of the other party. Drinking the blood essence of a spirit beast. Wei Changqing burst into tears. Spirit beast blood essence was only effective against spirit beast. If a human were to drink it, not only would it be ineffective, he might even find scales or hair growing all over him, as though a monster, or in the worst-case scenario, it might even spell death. After all, not everyone possessed Heaven's Path Zhenqi to neutralize the violent energy contained within the blood essence. Roar. Seeing no movements from the person under it, demon-sank beast roared once more as it opened the jade bottle and tried to stuff it in the other party's mouth. Zhongshe, save me. I won't try to tame it anymore. Wei Changqing's face immediately paled in fright, and his soul nearly drifted out of his body. Judging from the other party's vigorous actions, it seemed as though the demon-sank beast wanted him to eat the jade bottle on top of the spirit beast blood essence. If he didn't beg for mercy now, he would be dead soon. What the heck is this? He confidently declared that he would tame the other party's spirit beast, but this huge fellow simply refused to follow conventions. There was no spirit beast, even tamed ones, who could resist the allure of consonant spirit realm spirit beast blood essence. Upon sight, they would immediately fawn on him in hopes of obtaining it. Yet, this huge fellow thought of it as trash, and even tried to feed it to him. Will you be glad only after I'm dead? To think that a 4-star beast tamer would end up crushed under a spirit beast and be tamed by the latter instead, what in the world was this? Seeing that Wei Changqing would really die if this were to go on, Zhongxian reprimanded, "All right, demon-sank, that's enough." Roar. With a disappointed look, demon-sank lifted its claws and walked over to the side of the stage. As for the storage ring and the jade bottle of spirit beast blood essence, it didn't seem like it had any intentions of returning them. You must be jesting, these are my spoils of war. You want me to return them? Dream on. Cough cough. Spewing another 2 mouthfuls of blood, Wei Changqing struggled to his feet with a ghastly white face. He hadn't even begun his taming when he was already left on the verge of death by a spirit beast. If word were to get out, he would be too ashamed to call himself a beast tamer. He would simply be mocked. He hesitantly turned around to look at demon-sank beast, hoping to get back his storage ring and spirit beast blood essence, only to meet the latter's glare instead. A shiver went down his spine. How could he possibly get back his stuff like that? The other party's glare seemed to be saying, "It is already out of utmost benevolence on my part that you're still breathing now." Tears streamed down Wei Changqing's face. "I am here to find prestige. Why does it seem like I'm only embarrassing myself here? It seems like you didn't obtain the slightest loyalty from my tamed beast. Is there any point pushing on with the duel?" Zhongxian asked. The winner of the duel would be the one who managed to induce a higher loyalty level from the other party's tamed beast. Since Wei Changqing didn't obtain the slightest shred of loyalty from demon-sank beast, he was already fated to lose. There wasn't any point in continuing with it. Of course we should go on. Beast taming hinges on luck. You might not fare any better than me. If you were to fail as well, it could end in a draw. Wei Changqing gritted his teeth as he spoke. There wasn't much time left. Even though he wasn't able to tame demon-sank beast, the other party might not be able to win the loyalty of the Beryline spirit beast. It might just end in a draw. At the very least, he would be able to retain some of his dignity this way. Are you certain? Zhongxian asked the other party with a peculiar expression. Of course. Seeing the Zhongxian's expression, Wei Changqing thought that the other party was unconfident. Regaining his confidence, he sneered coldly, placed his hands behind his back, and turned to his tamed beast, Beryline Spirit Beast. Zhongshe over here will be trying to tame you. As long as you stand your ground and get back at him for me, I'll give you whatever you want when we return home. I can even find a suitable ancient bloodline to induce a bloodline evolution for you. Roar. Hearing its owner's promise, Beryline Spirit Beast's large eyes gleamed in determination as it hurriedly nodded its head. Shameless. How can one be so shameless? Indeed. Zhongshe told Demon Sank Beast to cooperate with him, and yet he actually told his tamed beast to not give in no matter what happens. How is Zhongshe supposed to tame the Beryline Spirit Beast like that? That is cheating. This is supposed to be a fair duel, and yet, he gave his tamed beast such orders. Does he have no dignity? Hearing Wei Changqing's words, a huge uproar broke out amidst the crowd below. Zhongshe had told Demon Sank Beast to cooperate with you. You were the one who lacked the capability to do so and ended up being beaten up instead. And now that it is the other party's turn, you actually gave such orders to your tamed beast, even offering a huge incentive for it. Do you have any pride? Since this is a duel of beast taming, the conditions should at least be fair. What happened to the magnanimity a master teacher should possess? Embarrassing. How embarrassing. The various elders of the Zijin sect clasped their faces. They didn't expect a genius of their sect to resort to such underhanded tricks. What is this? With this, even if they were to win the Master Teacher tournament, they would be too ashamed to face anyone. I'll be starting then. Seeing that the other party hadn't given up yet, Zhongxian shook his head with a bitter smile before turning to look at Beryline Spirit Beast. Roar. Roaring furiously, Beryline Spirit Beast, like Demon Sank Beast, tried to crush Zhongxian under its claws. It had seen how its master had suffered under Demon Sank Beast, and it intended to get back at Zhongshe for this. However, it only possessed a cultivation of transcendent mortal 4-dan primary stage. It couldn't pose any threat to Zhongxian at all. With a sidestep, Zhongxian dodged the attack and retaliated with a slap. Pa! A resounding slap struck Beryline Spirit Beast's giant face. Before that giant fellow could react, it was already twirling in the air before being face-planted into the ground, leaving behind 2 gigantic, twitching feet exposed. Zhongxian possessed the strength that rivaled even a consonant spirit realm intermediate stage expert, a might exceeding 2 million ding. Even a spirit realm low-tier weapon would shatter before such immense might. If not for him holding back, Beryline Spirit Beast would already be crippled at this point. Not to mention, the other party's movement was too fast for it to even perceive, let alone retaliate. Beryline Spirit Beast stood no chance against Zhongxian from the very start. What? With a single slap, he actually face-planted a transcendent mortal 4-dan Spirit Beast. How much strength does it take to achieve such a feat? Everyone was flabbergasted. Spirit beasts were blessed with superior physiques. With their powerful might and formidable defense, human cultivators of the same cultivation realm were hardly a match for them. In other words, this transcendent mortal 4-dan primary stage Beryline Spirit Beast would be match for even a transcendent mortal advanced stage cultivator. Yet, it was actually face-planted helplessly into the ground with a single slap. What kind of monstrous strength did Zhongshe possess? Isn't that a little, way too fearsome? Below the stage, the lips of Wu Tianhao, who had been recovered from the building and was currently spectating the duel, twitched in fright. He thought that it was only a stroke of fortune that the other party managed to throw him off the stage. If he had been a bit more careful, he would not have lost. But at this moment, he realized that it was a stroke of fortune that he was only thrown into the sky. If the other party had directed that slap at him then, his head might not have been attached to his neck right now. You said that he's weak in physical duels? Wu Tianhao glanced at his friend. I'll sever my friendship with you. Wu Tianhao's friend. Wait a moment. While Zhongshe does have the upper hand in a physical duel, if he continues to beat Beryline Spirit Beast up like that, how can he win the other party's loyalty? That's right. If Zhongshe fails to induce the slightest bit of loyalty in Beryline Spirit Beast, won't the duel end in a draw? Damn it. Zhongsha should have been the winner. Once a draw occurs, things will get troublesome. After recovering from the shock, everyone came to a realization. In a conventional beast taming process, one would take out alluring treasures that a spirit beast couldn't reject to win its goodwill. On the contrary, beating up a spirit beast would only result in an irreconcilable grudge with it. As a 4-star beast tamer, Zhongsha should have aware of this. Why did he lay his hands on Berylline's spirit beast then? Not to mention, his blow was exceptionally heavy. Such actions would only incur the resentment of Berylline's spirit beast. Not only would he not win the loyalty level of it, he would even be hated. Haha, let's see what are you going to do now. Not expecting Zhongxian to be so reckless as to lay his hands on Berylline's spirit beast, Wei Changqing nearly burst into laughter. He had spent 2 entire years offering all kinds of treasures for the other party to choose, even hunting and sleeping with it before he managed to tame it. Yet, this fellow actually sent such a heavy slap to it. Given Berylline's spirit beast's proud nature, it would be a huge blessing if it didn't charge up to tear him apart. To achieve a positive loyalty level under such a situation? Impossible. Even though he failed to obtain the loyalty of Demon Sank Beast, the other party also failed with Berylline's spirit beast. If so, it would be a draw. In fact, in terms of goodwill, he might even be said to be the winner. Dang. Just as Wei Changqing was trembling with delight, a tong sounded and incense's time was up. An incense's time was only a rough gauge for the duration of a match, but even so, it meant that the competitors should start wrapping up to determine the winner. Zhongxian didn't have any time to resort to any tricks anymore. It could be said that Wei Changqing was in a safe position already. Humph. Didn't you all say that I should admit my defeat, and that I would surely lose? Look, I've managed to achieve a draw with even the strongest contender of the tournament. Let's see what else can you say. The more he thought about it, the more excited he felt. Turning to the young man before him, he spoke proudly, Zhongsha, since you failed to tame Berylline's spirit beast and I failed to tame Demon Sank Beast, why don't we call it a draw? A draw? Indeed. In fact, given how you laid your hands on Berylline's spirit beast and incurred its resentment, it can be said that you've already lost in terms of goodwill. Wei Changqing said. You all spoke of magnanimity. Here it is. It should have been clearly Zhongsha's loss, but I allowed him to go off with a draw. Resentment. Just as Wei Changqing was still immersed in his delight, the young man before him shook his head and kicked the gigantic legs twitching above the ground. What are you feigning death for? Hurry up and acknowledge your new master. Huala. Roar. Following which, Berylline's spirit beast hurriedly plucked itself out of the ground, rushed to Zhongsha excitedly, and knelt down. It cuddled up to Zhongsha with its head, as though a cute pug fawning over its master. What? Wei Changqing's body stiffened, and his eyes nearly fell to the ground. How could this be? Didn't the other party just beat it up? Why was it acknowledging the other party as its master now? Can anyone tell me what in the world is going on? Chapter 596. Sword Duel. Wei Changqing found himself standing on the brink of insanity. It was just a moment ago that he offered such a huge incentive to Berylline's spirit beast for it to resist the other party's taming. And yet, in the blink of an eye, it had already betrayed him. Isn't there a mistake somewhere? If the other party had offered something beyond him, such as a higher-tier spirit beast blood essence, Wei Changqing would have conceded. But what the other party offered was a resounding slap instead. Where did the pride you had when I tamed you go? Do you have any dignity? Berylline's spirit beast, what are you doing? Have you already forgotten that you're my spirit beast? Blood rushed to Wei Changqing's head as his face reddened in rage. Roaring loudly, he stomped forward. As my spirit beast, how can you kneel and fawn over another? If even this could be tolerated, there would be nothing in the world that couldn't be tolerated. Who? But before he could get close, a gigantic claw suddenly appeared before his eyes. Peng! Kicked squarely in his chest, Wei Changqing was sent flying backward, and blood spurted wildly from his mouth. You! Wei Changqing was frenzied. The one who struck him wasn't anyone else but his own tamed beast. To think that he would be kicked by his own tamed beast while giving it a piece of his mind. It seemed like the latter had really betrayed him. I spent 2 years to tame you, and the money I spent on you is sufficient to build even a castle. And yet, just the thought of it caused another mouthful of blood to spurt from Wei Changqing's mouth. Big brother, isn't this going a little too far? Zhongshe managed to tame Berylline's spirit beast. Furthermore, with just a single slap. While Wei Changqing was busy spewing blood, the crowd spectating the commotion also felt as though their heads were bursting apart. The sight before them was simply too inconceivable for them to accept. Was this a supernatural encounter, a paranormal sight, or an occult occurrence? With just a single slap, Zhongshe actually managed to tame Berylline's spirit beast to the point that it didn't even recognize its own master anymore, even kicking the latter away. Why did it sound so fantastical? So this is Zhongshe's beast pummeling taming method? Pavilion Master Kang, Su Shi, and the others found their lips twitching uncontrollably. When they heard of it from Zhao Ya, they took it with a tinge of skepticism. After all, the very notion of it was simply too ridiculous. But upon seeing it, they realized that it was even more ridiculous and fearsome than what they had imagined. To make a spirit beast betray its master and become subservient to one with a single slap, how in the world does this work? How humiliating. The various elders from Zijin's sect grasped their faces once more. Cough cough, you don't need to kowtow anymore. I'll take you in as my tamed beast. After Berylline's spirit beast kicked Wei Changqing away, it started kowtowing profusely, in fear of being rejected. Roar. Seeing that the other party had agreed to it, Berylline's spirit beast stood up, walked over to the edge of the stage, and stood beside Demon Sank Beast as though an underling. Indescribable excitement glowed in its eyes. With a proud gaze, it glanced at Wei Changqing, whose face was trickling with blood. Wei Changqing clutched at his own chest, stifled. It was only at this moment that it suddenly struck him the reason why Zhongshe kept asking him if he was certain. It wasn't that the other party was unconfident, the other party was just afraid that he would be humiliated too badly. If only he'd known, he wouldn't have clutched on to his pride and defied the words of his sect elders. He would have just admitted defeat obediently. Not only did he lose his storage ring and spirit beast blood essence, his soul-tamed beast even betrayed him. In just a single duel, he had lost all of his wealth. Just as he was thinking this, Zhongshe's voice suddenly sounded. Does this count as my victory? If you still have any disagreements, we can go another round. There's no need for it. I admit defeat. Wei Changqing's face paled in fright, and he hurriedly shook his head. Go another round? Just a single round could put me in such a tragic state. If I were to go another round, who knows whether I would be alive by the end of it or not. Seeing the other party admit his defeat, Zhongxian smiled in satisfaction. Then, he turned to Demon Sank Beast and gestured. Demon Sank, return his possessions to him. Roar! Demon Sank Beast's face was filled with indignation, but eventually, it still returned the jade bottle and the storage ring. This. Wei Changqing was taken aback. Demon Sank Beast had stolen these from him in the midst of his beast taming, and after his shameful actions, there would be no one who would protest even if Zhongshe were to take these things for his own. But to his surprise, Zhongshe actually chose to have it returned to him. Demon Sank is lacking in propriety, so do pardon him for his actions. It isn't easy for you to accrue such wealth, so it is only right for me to return these to you. Zhongxian said impassively. Zhongshe. Wei Changqing's eyes reddened. This is what a true master teacher should be like. To win, Wei Changqing had shown an unsporting attitude and resorted to many underhanded tricks. Despite this, the other party overlooked it and defeated him honestly. On top of that, the other party didn't fault him on his behavior either, going to the extent of even returning the confiscated goods. This magnanimity. He felt as though he was nothing more than a clown. Compared to the other party, his actions were truly laughable. From now onward, I shall be Zhongshe's loyal follower. I'll make anyone who dares to talk bad about him apologize. Clenching his fists tightly, Wei Changqing made a vow in his heart. Formidable master teachers had their own followers as well. These followers would help to build the master teacher's reputation and bring glory to his name. To become a great master teacher respected throughout this vast continent, followers were a necessity. Zhongxian couldn't have expected that this casual whim of his would actually make this 4-star master teacher a follower of his. Wei Changqing's loss meant that Zhongxian had successfully progressed to the next round. Soon, the other stages also came to a conclusion, and the top 8 candidates were out. Luo Xian and Liao Wuji, the 2 most popular contenders for the champion seat, were among the group. What that surprised Zhongxian was that Song Chao was also among the group. It seemed like even though the latter seemed a little dull-witted before him, he still possessed incredible capabilities. With his help, Ruo Huan Gongzi was also within the group. However, the competition was extremely intense at this stage, and it would be difficult for him to progress any further than this. Hong Shi soon announced the pairings of the next match. Alright, let's begin the round to determine the top 4. I'll announce the matches now. On stage A, Jun Ruohuan of Myriad Kingdom Alliance will face Luo Xian of Fleeting Cloud Sect. On stage B, Bai Jianghai of Gazing River Sect will be facing Song Chao of Blue Frost Sect. On stage D, Zhongxian of Myriad Kingdom Alliance will be facing Liao Wuji of Frigid Gale Sect. Liao Wuji? Hearing the name of his opponent, Zhongxian was taken aback. He had heard of this name before. It was the genius second to only Luo Xian on the list of contenders for the champion seat. He didn't expect to meet him in the round to determine the top 4. Zhongshu, you must be careful of Liao Wuji. I've watched his previous matches, and all of them were physical duels. Furthermore, he won every single one of them with astounding might each time. Susha stepped forward and said. Take the last match where he fought against a candidate of White Alios sect for example. With just 3 slashes of his sword, his opponent was no longer able to raise his arm anymore and was forced to surrender. 3 slashes. UN. In the entire tournament, the maximum number of moves he made with his sword was only 3 slashes. In fact, in the first round, he didn't even draw his sword. He was able to knock out his opponent with just the sheath itself, Susha said with a grim expression. Zhongxian's previous matches coincided with Liao Wuji's, and as such, he hadn't really seen much of the other party's duels. Even though his only at clarifying turbidity realm pinnacle, if my eyes fail me not, his true strength is comparable to even a half-consonant spirit realm master teacher, Susha said. Zhongxian nodded in response. If what Susha said was true, Liao Wuji was indeed formidable. One must know that master teachers, with their keen eye of discernment and vast knowledge of cultivation in itself, are considered to be invincible within their power class. To be able to defeat a master teacher of higher cultivation realm is an incredible feat in itself. It's about to start. After discussing a moment longer, Zhongxian saw the other party walking over to the stage, and thus, he began walking over without any hesitation as well. At this moment, the aura shrouding Liao Wuji seemed to have reached the peak. His very presence was reminiscent of the sharp edge of a sword. As soon as Zhongxian stepped onto the stage, Liao Wuji immediately said, Zhongshu, I challenge you to a sword duel. Sure. It just so happens that I've learnt a new sword art recently, and I've yet to try it out. Zhongxian smiled lightly. He didn't say those words out of humility, those words were the absolute fact. Not only had he never used the sword art before, he had never even practiced it before. In other words, he had only emulated the sword art in his mind ever since learning it. As such, he wasn't sure about exactly how strong it would be. And this sword art was the enhanced version of Heaven's Path sword art that he tidied up on his way to the Glacier Plain Court. The Heaven's Path sword art, Heaven's Path spear art, and other Heaven's Path battle techniques started out as movements, but beyond that point, it was hinged mainly on conception. A difference in conception could result in vastly different results for the same set of movements. As such, master swordsmen were able to train through their thoughts. They didn't need to go through the physical motions with a sword in hand. To have not executed a sword art that one has learned and not know how powerful it is. Zhongxian was probably the only one in the entire history of the world. Seeing the other party agree to it, Liao Wuji smiled. Then, he turned to Hongshu and said, Hongshu, I've a request that I'd like to make. Speak. Hongshu nodded. I wish for a private duel with Zhongshu. I hope that you can accede to my request. Liao Wuji said. You want a private duel? All right, I can agree to that. Hong Shi nodded. Given that Zhong Shi was a powerful adversary, the chances were that Liao Wuji would have to resort to his trump cards, and it was understandable why he wouldn't want his trump cards to be exposed in public. As such, his request was reasonable. In any case, everyone here was a master teacher, and there was no one who would be so shameless as to deny their own loss. Who? Hong Shi snapped his fingers, and a mist immediately rose in stage D, hiding it from the sight of others. Even a consonant spirit realm expert would be unable to peer through it. It's a pity that we'll miss out on such an exciting duel. Indeed. Liao Wuji possesses incredible aptitude in swordsmanship, while the depth to Zhong Shi's ability has yet to be uncovered. I thought that I could learn some things from their duel, but it turns out they will be conducting it in private. How frustrating. Then, who of the two do you think would win? My bet is on Zhong Shi. There hasn't been an opponent in the tournament who could match him so far. Liao Shi might be powerful, but it is unlikely that he would be a match for him. I disagree with your view. Liao Shi's aptitude in swordsmanship could be said to be unmatched by any of his peers. It's like you didn't see the previous duels he had. There was no one who could withstand the immense might of his swordsmanship. Given how skilled Zhong Shi is in fist art, he must have devoted most of his time to it. There is a good chance that he might be lacking in his swordsmanship. The most anticipated duel ended up being a private one. Everyone couldn't help but find it a huge pity. Sure, I think their duel has already begun. Suddenly, someone amidst the crowd shouted. Following which, the guards and soldiers in the surroundings suddenly felt their swords in their hands shake, and an agitated metallic call sounded from their resonance. This is Call of the Myriad Swords, Roar of the Dragons. But which of the two of them has achieved Sword Heart Realm? Chapter 597, Imparting Sword Art. Call of the Myriad Swords, Roar of the Dragons. This phenomenon was a manifestation of Sword Heart Realm. Upon reaching such a level of mastery in swordsmanship, one's sword would be granted spirit, allowing one to wield it as though it was one's own limbs. To a master swordsman, this enhanced level of control could easily translate into a twofold increase in fighting prowess. Those who had achieved this realm were already qualified to establish their own sects and start their own lineage of swordsmanship. In fact, most of the current sect leaders and emperors in the world hadn't even reached such a level yet. Just which of the duo in the mist was the one who had reached this astounding level of mastery, causing the innumerable swords out here to bow down to him? And who was the one filling the entire stage with sword chi, leaving the crowd below with goosebumps? It must be Liao Wuji. Our two sects are stationed at the foot of the mountain beyond Myriad Kingdom City, and he has been practicing his swordsmanship by the waterfall every morning. The metallic echo of his sword reverberates through the entire valley, gushing up into the heavens. Back then, I realized that even if he hadn't reached Sword Heart Realm, he must at least be at Sword Intent Realm Pinnacle. Now that you spoke of it, I suddenly remember seeing the marks he left behind in his training once. Through the manifestation of sword chi, his swings could easily reach a distance of several zhong, 10 to 30 meters. That day, when I coincidentally walked by his training location, I realized that all of the marks on the ground are of equal depth. Most probably, only a person who has achieved Sword Heart Realm would be capable of such precise control. Well, Liao Wuji isn't called the unparalleled sword genius of the Frigid Gale sect for nothing, after all. Indeed, one who has achieved Sword Heart Realm is practically undefeatable among those of the same cultivation realm. Not to mention, Zhong Shi's cultivation is lower than the other party from the very start. I'm afraid the latter's chance at victory is extremely slim. I don't share your viewpoint. On the contrary, I think that Zhong Shi is the one who has reached Sword Heart Realm. It's not like you didn't see the miracles he has created in past few rounds. Sensing the manifestation of seemingly endless sword chi within the mist, grave looks appeared on the faces of the master teachers below the stage. Sword Heart Realm? Wu Tianhao's body trembled. His initial thought back then was to challenge Zhong Shi to a sword duel instead of a fist duel. He thought that given his mastery in swordsmanship, the duel would be a walk in the park for him. How could he have known that Zhong Shi would accept the fist duel? Thus, he thought that if he had another chance to challenge the other party, he would surely propose a sword duel straight away. But after sensing the clash of sword chi before him, he lost all of his confidence. Even if Zhongshe wasn't the one who had comprehended Sword Heart Realm, given how he could rival such an expert, his swordsmanship couldn't possibly be poor. At the very least, he knew he wouldn't stand a chance against a Sword Heart Realm expert. Can Zhongshe win? Pavilion Master Kang and the others were worried. Don't worry, he'll surely win. Just that. Zhao Feiwu's eyebrows knitted together. Just that. Knowing that the second princess was close with Zhongshe, the others immediately turned their attention to her. Without a doubt, Zhongshe's swordsmanship has already reached Sword Heart Realm, Zhao Feiwu revealed. Back then, on Shenyuan Kingdom's Heaven's Altar, Zhongshe has displayed the might of a Sword Heart Realm expert. Standing atop the back of an aerial spirit beast then, Jin Songhai and her had seen everything clearly. Along with the rise in his cultivation, his level of comprehension in swordsmanship must have been deepened as well. She had no doubt that the person who had gotten into the Sword Heart Realm within the mist was him. Even if that wasn't the case, she was confident that Zhongshe's swordsmanship mastery was in no way lower than this. Just that he doesn't have any suitable weapons. Zhao Feiwu continued. Zhongshe had risen too quickly. Even though he managed to accrue sufficient spirit stones to fuel his cultivation, he hadn't been able to find a suitable weapon for himself. Back at Honghai City Formation Master Guild, he even had to borrow the weapons of others to inscribe a formation plate. While one's swordsmanship mastery was important in a sword duel, one's weapon also played a pivotal role. If one didn't have a decent weapon to rival the weapon of one's opponent, one would be immediately placed in a disadvantageous position. How can this be? Pavilion Master Kang and the others were stunned. With a teacher as formidable as Yangshe, they thought the one thing Zhongshe wouldn't lack was cultivation resources. Who could have known that he wouldn't even have a spirit middle-tier sword? To fight against a formidable sword genius in a sword duel without a decent sword, how could he win? If only they had known in advance, they would have surely gotten one for him. Now that the duel had already begun, they couldn't interfere anymore. It's too late to do anything, we can only have faith in Zhongshe. Zhao Feiwu shook her head. While the group was still worried for Zhongshe, a voice suddenly sounded from the mist. Hongshe, please release the formation. The battle has ended. Everyone was stunned. If the formation was going to be released, did it mean that there was already a conclusion to the duel? But how much time had passed? Making a rough estimate, it seemed like it hadn't been even 2 minutes since the start. A victor was already decided in this short period of time? This was way too fast. Who? Amidst perplexed gazes, the mist slowly scattered, revealing two silhouettes. Zhongshe and Liao Wuji were still standing at their original position before the duel, as though nothing had happened before. There wasn't the slightest wound or cut on their bodies either. It should have been a perilous sword duel, but on the surface, it seemed as though the fight hadn't even started. So who won? I've no idea either, but where is Zhongshe's sword? You're right. Isn't this a sword duel? Why isn't Zhongshe wielding a sword? It can't be that Zhongshe has admitted defeat. The crowd quickly realized that, while there was a sharp sword in Liao Wuji's hand, Zhongshe's hands were completely empty. It was impossible to tell whether he had put the sword back into his storage ring or he didn't take anything out in the first place. It was impossible to discern who won or lost from this alone. Just as the crowd was speculating the situation. I lost. Liao Wuji declared suddenly. He shook his head and put his sword back into his storage ring. Liaoshe lost. What happened? A huge commotion immediately broke out after the shocking admit of defeat. What in the world did Zhongshe do in that 2 minutes to make the sword genius Liao Wuji admit defeat so willingly? Zhongshe's swordsmanship has reached a profound level that is far beyond me. Ignoring the shocked gazes from the crowd below, Liao Wuji stepped forward and clasped his fist. I've reached Sword Heart Realm primary stage, but I find myself unable to progress any further than that. May I ask Zhongshe to enlighten me as to how I should proceed from here onward? He was the only one of the entire Frigid Gale sect to have reached Sword Heart Realm, and thus, he could only slowly progress through trial and error. But at this stage, he found himself completely clueless as to how he could further progress. Even though the person before him was even younger than him, his comprehension of swordsmanship was far beyond his own. If the other party could offer him some pointers, he would surely be able to climb to even higher heights. "You want my pointers?" Even though Zhongxian didn't expect Liao Wuji to ask for his guidance so directly, he nodded his head impassively and raised his hand. "Pass me your sword." "Yes." Liao Wuji's eyes lit up upon hearing those words. He immediately took out his sword and passed it to the other party. With a flick of his finger, Zhongxian drew the sword, and a stifling cold gleam immediately reflected into the surroundings. "Zhongshe is going to offer some pointers to Liao Wuji?" That seems to be the case. But if it's just offering pointers, why can't he use his own sword? After all, the sword has already acknowledged Liao Wuji to be his master. If the sword spirit were to resist Zhongshe's control, he would be unable to fully display the might of his swordsmanship. Indeed, how bizarre. A deep frown appeared on everyone's forehead after seeing Zhongxian asking for Liao Wuji's sword. A spirit tier sword possessed spirit, and as long as the master it had recognized was still alive, it would be hard for anyone else to wield it. Since Zhongshe was going to display his impart some pointers to the other party, why couldn't he use his own sword? Just as the crowd was perplexed as to what Zhongshe was doing, the sword in the latter's hand suddenly released a crisp call. "Spirit Euphoria, the sword wants to acknowledge him as its master." He made Liao Shi's sword acknowledge him just by touching it. Everyone was stunned. One must know that making a spirit tier weapon acknowledge one as its master was an extremely troublesome process. There were many people who would spend years wiping their sword daily, treating it with utmost care and concern, and had yet to succeed. On the other hand, Zhongshe, with a single touch, actually induced spirit euphoria from Liao Shi's sword. Wasn't this way too unbelievable? Liao Wuji clearly didn't expect this either, and his eyes widened in shock. Back then, he had spent half a year of effort, during which, he even nourished it for an entire month with his own blood, before successfully making the sword submit to him. Yet, the other party, with a single touch, won the loyalty of the sword. Was the gap between the both of them really this big? While he was overwhelmed with shock, Zhongshe's impassive voice sounded. "Look carefully, I'll only show it to you once." Thus, he quickly calmed himself down and focused his attention on the other party. The crowd below also fell silent. Everyone's eyes were widened, and they dared not blink in fear of missing out even the slightest detail. To defeat Liao Shi, who had comprehended the sword heart realm, they wanted to see how far Zhongshe had progressed in the path of swordsmanship. Who? Amidst everyone's intense gazes, the sword in Zhongxian's hand moved. The sword, which was emitting a stifling cold gleam a moment ago, seemed to have lost its glow and strength in Zhongshe's hand. The blow seemed to carry no weight behind it at all. At the same time, it felt like a movement from the extension of his hand. There was no dissonance in that simple movement at all. Voila! The cut was made toward Liao Wuji. After shooting past him, it quickly retracted. Even though there was minimal force behind the movement, it was extremely fast, so there were many who failed to catch its full motion. Dang lang! Zhongxian sheathed the sword, threw it back to the other party, and walked off the stage. What a fast sword art! Is this Zhongshe's comprehension of swordsmanship? Everyone stared at one another in incomprehension. Even Liao Wuji himself was confused. While Zhongshe's sword was fast, he could easily emulate that speed with his strength. In fact, he could go even faster than that. If this was all there was to it, there was nothing he could learn from this. Who? Amidst his confusion, a wind suddenly blew, and a hair from his forehead was lifted into the air before slowly floating down. With his previous movement, he severed a strand of my hair. Seeing the floating strand of hair, Liao Wuji's eyes narrowed. Given his lush hair, to sever a single hair precisely without cutting any other, the other party's control over his sword had reached an absurd level. As expected of Zhongshe, fearsome, Zhongshe severed a hair with his sword without Liao Shi noticing. What kind of swordsmanship is that? How powerful must one's control of the sword be to achieve such a feat? I have no idea. But this is probably the very pinnacle of lower sword heart. Perhaps, it might even be at the level of middle sword heart. Middle sword heart. Everyone fell silent in shock. If they hadn't witnessed such a sight for themselves, they would have never believed that anyone in the world would be able to control their weapon so precisely. Zhongshe, I thank you for your pointer. Liao Wuji clasped his fist respectfully. Zhongxian's departing figure suddenly stopped and asked, "Did you understand it?" "I understand. The reason why Zhongshe severed a single hair is to tell me to refine my control over my sword." Liao Wuji quickly stated his own understanding of the situation. But before he was done speaking, Zhongshe shook his head. His back beneath the moonlight seemed to slump slightly in disappointment. "It seems like you didn't understand it." After which, he flicked his wrist lightly. Hoo! Another wind blew, and the hair instantaneously split into dozens of segments which danced in their surroundings. It wasn't a single slash? Liao Wuji's face immediately paled. Chapter 598, Duel of Knowledge Impartation. It was impossible for the wind generated from the movement of the other party's sleeve to sever the air. There was only one possibility to the current situation. Zhongshe's previous movement wasn't just a single cut, it was dozens of cuts. However, these cuts didn't sever the strand of hair entirely, making it seem as though it was still whole. It was only under the tug of the light breeze that they came to the limit of their durability and broke into dozens of segments. Glancing downward to look at the floating segments of the strand of hair, he realized that each segment was of equal length, and the point of severance was smooth. Even slicing a strand of hair with a sword was extremely difficult even for a sword heart realm expert. To consecutively cut a strand of hair dozens of times without severing it. How insane must one's level of control be? Liao Wuji's body trembled uncontrollably. No words could express his emotions at this moment. He'd thought that he had understood the other party's pointer, but from the start to the end, he was merely scratching at the surface. This wasn't just mere control anymore. Rather, his sword had become a part of his body and gained sensitivity. That was the only plausible reason as to why he could accurately gauge the depth of each cut so it could be split apart with a slight breeze instantaneously. Coming to a realization, he quickly lifted his head, only to realize that Zhongshe had already left the stage. "I'll work hard so as to not let you down." Replaying the motion of Zhongxian's sword in his head, Liao Shi realized that this was a huge opportunity for him. Clenching his fists tightly, he walked down the stage and returned back to his group. In an instant, numerous elders of the frigid Gale sect immediately surrounded him. "How did you lose just now? He didn't seem to be holding a sword just now. What did he use to defeat you?" The group was still bewildered by the happenings before. Zhongshe didn't seem to have even taken out his sword at all. But if that was the case, why did Liao Wuji admit defeat? What did he use to defeat me? Remembering the sight from before, Liao Wuji smiled bitterly before saying, "A finger." A finger. Everyone was dumbstruck. Luck no longer played as heavy a role in the battle for the top four. Song Chao and Ruo Huangongzi were forced to stop at this point. Other than Zhongxian, the other three who managed to qualify for the next round were all 4-star Pinnacle Master Teacher, Transcendent Mortal 4-dan Pinnacle experts. As if trying to not let the expectations of the crowd down, they were all the most popular contenders for the champion seat as well. This was especially so for Luo Xian. In the fight against Ruo Huangongzi, he had achieved a near-perfect victory. While it was regrettable that Ruo Huangongzi had to stop here, he was already content. If not for Zhongshe, he might have been eliminated in the selection round. How else could he have possibly gotten into the top 8 and gained the opportunity to study at Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy? For the next round, Luo Xian of Fleeting Cloud Sect will be fighting against Bai Jianghai of Gazing River Sect, and Huang Zheng of Cascading Sand Sect will be fighting against Zhongxian of the Myriad Kingdom Lion. Hong Shi revealed the matching for the round. Huang Zheng of Cascading Sand Sect. The fellow who is placed 4th on the list of potential contenders for champion. Zhongxian glanced at the young man on the stage. Placed in the 4th rank, this fellow was in no way inferior to Liao Wuji, be it his strength or his cultivation. Yuan Zhongshe, be careful. Even though the dueling format Huang Zheng proposed in each match has been different, he still won every one of them with ease. His true capability is fearsome. In fact, I'm even thinking that he might have hidden his true strength. Pavilion Master Kang said with a grim expression. He had been paying attention to Huang Zheng's duels, and even though the latter had chosen different dueling formats for each round, he was still able to triumph over his opponent easily. The latter's capability seemed to be greater than what he had predicted. In fact, the latter didn't seem to lose out to Luo Xian at all. It matters not who he is, having to face Zhongshe, he should be the one who's worried. Zhao Feiwu smiled. You're right. Pavilion Master Kang laughed awkwardly. He had been worried that Zhongshe would be unable to survive the full tournament due to his lacking cultivation, but after the duels with Wu Tianhao and Liao Wuji, such a thought had vanished completely from his mind. Zhongshe was just like an invincible god of war. Those who faced him in battle would meet tragic ends that would totally shatter their confidence. While Huang Zheng had shown spectacular results in his previous matches, that was only because his opponents were someone else. Against Zhongshe, it was unlikely he would fare any better than the others. Seeing the group's confidence in him, Zhongxian smiled bitterly before walking up to the stage. Huang Zheng was already on the stage at this point. Upon seeing Zhongxian, he clasped his fist and greeted, Zhongshe, Huangshe. Zhongxian also returned the gesture. I wish to challenge Zhongshe to a match of knowledge impartation, Huang Zheng said impassively. Knowledge impartation? UN. The rules are simple. 100 people will be randomly chosen from the square, and will conduct our lectures simultaneously. Impartation of Heaven's will is banned in the duel. At the end of the lecture, whoever manages 2 or more people to acknowledge him as their teacher will be the victor. Huang Zheng revealed the rules. Even the same dueling format could have different types of rules. But of course, if one were to find it unfair, they were allowed to reject it. I'll accept your challenge. Zhongxian nodded. Knowledge impartation? And impartation of Heaven's will is banned? Isn't this a little too much? Indeed. Impartation of Heaven's will is a symbol of master teachers' power, as well as their greatest strength. How could a match of knowledge impartation do without it? Huang Shi surely has it planned out well. Based on the previous experiences, it would be difficult to win against Zhongshe in any type of dueling format. However, knowledge impartation is different. Sometimes, no matter how good a teacher's lecture is, if a student simply doesn't like it, he wouldn't benefit much from it. As such, luck plays a significant role in this challenge as well. On top of that, impartation of Heaven's will is banned in the challenge as well. It's hard to tell who will win, indeed. Hearing the content of the competition, discussions broke out amidst the crowd. Knowledge impartation didn't hinge solely on the reputation and capability of the teacher only, there were many other factors in play as well. It was just like how even the most perfect of beings couldn't possibly win the amity of everyone. Human emotions are fickle, and this would be the greatest variable of them all. Zhongshe might be able to win with absolute certainty in other types of duel, but this it would be hard to say for sure. As expected of one of the most popular contender for the champion seat, Huang Zheng was able to come up with a countermeasure swiftly and propose a dueling format that was the most advantageous to him. Otherwise, he probably wouldn't stand a chance at all. The rules were simple, and since both sides had no objections, they started making preparations for the duel. Soon, 100 people were seated on the stage. Some were the guards from Myriad Kingdom Alliance, while some were just ordinary spectators. Having been chosen to listen to the lectures of 2 great master teachers, the eyes of the 100 people glowed in excitement. This was a godsend for them. It was not every day that one got to listen to the lecture of 2 genius 4-star master teachers. The cultivation realm of the group ranges over a wide spectrum, so why don't we just talk about some of the more fundamental knowledge behind cultivation instead? Otherwise, if we were to decipher a specific cultivation realm instead, those with lower cultivation realm would not understand, and those with higher cultivation realm would find it pointless. Huang Zheng said. The cultivation realms of the 100 people chosen ranged from Fighter 1 Dan to Transcendent Mortal 3 Dan. If they were to lecture on the cultivation of Transcendent Mortals, those still in the Fighter realm wouldn't understand. On the other hand, if they were to decipher the cultivation of Fighters, the ones who had transcended that realm would simply yawn in boredom. Only fundamental knowledge applicable to cultivation in general could pique all of their interests simultaneously. All right. Zhongxian nodded. He was fine with this decision. He might be lacking in other topics, but in terms of fundamentals in cultivation, even Kong Shi might not necessarily be able to speak better than him if he were here. The fundamentals compiled by the Library of Heaven's Path was completely devoid of flaws, and this was one feat that no master teacher could possibly achieve. All right. The both of us will use telepathy to relay our lecture to the group, and they'll be allowed to listen to the lecture of whoever they prefer. The time limit is an incense's time, and whoever wins the acknowledgement of members of the group after the time is up will be the winner. Huang Zheng explained the content of the duel before waving his hands. Let's begin then. Yuan. You go first. Zhong Xian gestured patiently with a smile. I won't stand on ceremony then. A glint flashed across Huang Zheng's eyes, and he began on his lecture. As he used telepathy to relay the content of his lecture, there was no one beneath the stage who could hear anything. After listening to the other party's lecture for a while, Zhong Xian felt that the other party's deciphering of the fundamentals wasn't too bad and nodded his head in commendation. Only then did he step forward and begin as well. The duel has begun, but given that the both of them are lecturing simultaneously, how does the listening group decide on whom they should listen to? Simple, they'll just listen to the lecture which content attracts and benefits them. You're right. Although most cultivators are incapable of multitasking, it isn't too difficult for them to filter off the words of one side. Seeing that the duel had begun, discussions immediately sounded from the crowd. Who do you think will win this match? It's hard to say, but my bet is on Zhong Shi again. If impartation of heaven's will was allowed, Zhong Shi surely wouldn't have any problem. But given the rules, it'll have to depend on whose fundamental knowledge of fundamental is stronger. Considering the larger collection of profound books in the Cascading Sand sect, Huang Zheng seems to be in a far better position. There was no one below who wasn't curious about how this would turn out. Since they were unable to listen to the content of the lecture, they focused their attention on the group on the stage in hopes of being able to discern something. But it was a pity that their hopes fell flat. The group listening to the lecture seemed to have been hypnotized. They were indeed listening attentively with a look drunk in pleasure, but it was impossible to tell whether the cause of it was Zhong Shi's lecture or Huang Shi's lecture. Just as everyone was curious to see the results of the duel, someone amidst the crowd suddenly shouted, Luo Xian and Bai Jianghai's duel has ended. The crowd immediately turned their sights to the other stage and saw that the duel had come to an end. Bai Jianghai's eyebrows were arched upward. He was carrying a disposition reminiscent of a majestic dragon, unassailable by any. On the other hand, Luo Xian, the most popular contender for the champion seat, was standing opposite to him. He was shaking his head with slightly disappointed expression. What happened? Who won? Seeing this sight, everyone was taken aback. Bai Jianghai came from humble origins, and he wasn't even among the top 10 contenders for the champion seat. As such, everyone thought that he would surely end in defeat against Luo Xian. But why does the scene tell a different story instead? Luo Shi lost, a master teacher who was spectating the duel said. His voice was tinged in disbelief, as though he found his own words hard to believe as well. Luo Shi is the strongest contender for the champion seat, how could he possibly lose? There were many among the crowd who found this conclusion inconceivable. The both of them competed in a duel of cultivation. The both of them are equals, or rather, Luo Shi was in a slightly more advantageous position. Logically speaking, he should have been able to win. Who could have thought that with a stroke of good luck, Bai Shi managed to achieve a breakthrough in the midst of the duel, reaching consonant spirit realm? That master teacher smiled bitterly. Achieve a breakthrough? Consonant spirit realm? Everyone was stunned. Chapter 599. Give me a moment, I'll go make some breakthroughs first. Consonant spirit realm was the first difficult hurdle of the 9 dons of transcendent mortal. There were innumerable cultivators who found their footsteps stopping altogether at clarifying turbidity realm pinnacle. This hurdle required one's soul to be perfectly harmonized with one's physical body. This balance was difficult to achieve even if one were to focus all of one's effort into it. To do so in the midst of a battle. Wasn't this Bai Shi a little, no, way too lucky? That was a realm that innumerable cultivators dream of. To actually succeed in such an unlikely situation. It isn't surprising that Luo Shi would lose under such circumstances. After all, that is consonant spirit realm. While luck did play a role in Bai Shi's sudden breakthrough, the previous hard work he put into his cultivation and his guts were also crucial to creating this miracle. It seems like Bai Shi is the true dark horse of this tournament. He has remained humble all along, but at a crucial moment, he still managed to turn the tables around. Impressive. After finding out what happened during the duel, everyone was impressed. Facing an equal in a duel was already a difficult feat in itself. To actually attempt a breakthrough at this moment, how much guts must it take for this? Putting aside how powerful Bai Shi was before, just his mental fortitude in itself was already extraordinary. Even though Luo Shi lost, considering his opponent, there was nothing for him to regret. Now the result of this match is out, let's see whether Zhong Shi or Bai Shi will win in that duel. Since one match of the semifinals was over, everyone turned their attention back to the other stage. They were curious to see which of the two geniuses would clash over the champion throne. They have stopped the lecture. The time is up, so it's about time for them to wrap things up. Amidst mutters from the crowd, the 100 people seated cross-legged on the stage slowly opened their eyes, and an excited gleam flashed across each and every one of their eyes. It seemed like this incense's time lecture session had brought them immense benefits, resolving many problems they had faced in their cultivation. Who won? I still can't tell. We'll have to see who the 100 people on stage will choose to acknowledge. Knowing that the conclusion to the match was near, everyone's hearts beat anxiously. They quickly turned their glances over, curious to see who would emerge victorious. With the end of the lecture, Zhong Xian heaved a sigh of relief as well. Even though he was confident in his lecture, he had no way of telling how the 100 people would choose. After all, without impartation of heaven's will, the credibility of his words would be significantly lower. On top of that, they would also find it harder to comprehend some of the more profound and abstract concepts. I've already tried my best, I can only wait for the results now. Shaking his head, Zhong Xian decided not to think too much into it. Thus, he turned his sight to the crowd and said, "Everyone." Zhong Xian was just about to ask who was willing to acknowledge him as their teacher when a silhouette suddenly flashed across his eyes. A person had kneeled before him. "Zhong Shi, please take me in as your student. I'll surely study hard so as to not let you down." "Huang Shi, what are you doing?" Taking a closer look at the face of the kneeling person, Zhong Xian leaped in fright. It was no other than his opponent, Huang Zheng. Even though the both of them were conducting their own lectures, they could still listen to the content of the other party's lecture. The content of Zhong Xian's lecture was incredibly profound, but he had managed to express it in a simplified form that anyone could easily comprehend. What? Right after the lecture, before the others could make their decision, Huang Shi has already tried to acknowledge Zhong Shi as his teacher. Can anyone tell me what is going on? To make a 4-star pinnacle master teacher kneel with just fundamental knowledge. Just what in the world was spoken in the lecture? Indeed. Furthermore, impartation of heaven's will wasn't used at all throughout the lecture. The crowd below flew into a frenzy. Based on Zhong Shi's previous feats, it was entirely possible for him to beguile Huang Shi into kneeling before him. But impartation of heaven's will was banned in the duel, and the content of the lecture was only fundamental knowledge of cultivation. For Huang Shi to kneel down just like that. What in the world happened? It was such an intense duel, but before the results were out, the other party had already kneeled down to acknowledge the other party as his teacher. No matter how composed the crowd was, they still felt as though their heads were about to be blown away from shock. Must everything be so exaggerated? "Zhong Shi, we would also like to come under your tutelage." But that wasn't the end of it. Every single one of the 100 cultivators on stage quickly rushed forward and kneeled before Zhong Xian as well. Their eyes gleamed in earnest respect for the latter. All 100 of them chose Zhong Shi. In an instant, the entire square fell completely silent. If 2 master teachers of the equivalent ranks were to conduct a lecture simultaneously, the result would usually be around half on both sides. After all, knowledge impartation in itself was subjective, and one's choice could be easily influenced by one's own emotions. And yet, all 100 cultivators actually chose to acknowledge Zhongxian as their teacher. What in the world did he talk about to impress every last one of them? On top of that, he even captured the heart of a 4-star pinnacle master teacher in the midst of doing so. Even a 5-star master teacher wouldn't be capable of such a feat. Alright, you all should get up. Regardless of the final result, I'll conduct a lecture for everyone at the end of the tournament. Zhongxian also didn't expect so many to acknowledge him at once, and he couldn't help but feel a headache. Yes. Hearing Zhongshe agreeing to conduct a lecture, the group nodded their heads and took a step back. In this round, Zhongshe is the victor. Seeing that everyone had finally calmed down, Hongshe nodded his head and announced the result. Don't pull me, I must acknowledge Zhongshe as my teacher. Just as Hongshe was about to announce the final round, a scream of agony sounded. Shooting a glance over, his lips twitched uncontrollably. Huang Shi, who had walked onto the stage haughtily a moment ago, was kneeling earnestly before Zhongshe, unwilling to back down at all. In the end, he had to be dragged away by his fellow peers in the sect, but even so, he still continued shouting as though a lunatic. Sigh, this fellow is a goner. Seeing this scene of madness, Hongshe shook his head. As a 4-star pinnacle master teacher, it struck him even more vividly how profound Zhongxian's comprehension of cultivation was, and as such, he also suffered the greatest side effect. Looking at the other party's state, it seemed like he would never compromise until Zhongshe took him in as his student. There was not a single round that Zhongshe didn't pass without breaking anything. He didn't even spare his fellow humans as well. Those who faced him were either severely injured or went insane. What the heck was this? It was as if shattering artifacts wasn't sufficient to satisfy him. He had to destroy every last shred of the confidence of his opponent as well. Alright, we'll rest for 10 minutes before the champion round. Zhongshe will be facing Baisha. Ignoring the completely flabbergasted faces of the crowd below and the convulsing Huang Zheng, Hongshe announced the results. Thus, Zhongxian walked down from the stage. Zhongshe, Baisha has managed to reach consonant spirit realm in the midst of the round and defeated Luoshe. As soon as Zhongxian walked over, Pavilion Master Kang hurriedly pulled him to the side and explained the situation of the previous round to him. He managed to achieve a breakthrough in the midst of the duel and defeated Luoshe? Zhongxian was taken aback. This matter sounded bizarre even to him. Indeed. Even though there's only a thin wall between consonant spirit realm primary stage and clarifying turbidity realm pinnacle, it is a whole new world on the other side. I fear that he will challenge you to a duel of cultivation. There's no doubt about it, he will surely do that. Pavilion Master Kang, Su Shi, and the others couldn't help but feel worried for Zhongxian. Even though Zhongshe was able to win against transcendent mortal 4-dan pinnacle Liao Wuji with his swordsmanship, it would still be difficult for him to face a true consonant spirit realm expert. Consonant spirit realm represented a perfect harmony between a tempered soul and a body. Not only would one's strength increase by leaps and bounds, one's reaction speed and flexibility would be significantly enhanced as well. At this point, one could be said to have stepped into the gateway of becoming a true expert. It would be difficult to win against Zhongshe in any other challenge, so Baisha would surely opt for a challenge that could utilize the advantage in his cultivation. After all, no matter how spectacular Zhongshe's results were, he was only at transcendent mortal 3-dan pinnacle. Regardless of how talented or astute his senses were, it was impossible for him to make up for the gap between two huge cultivation realms to defeat a consonant spirit realm expert. No one had never done so, not even the geniuses in the long history of the Master-Teacher Pavilion. He will surely propose a cultivation duel to Zhongshe. What should we do? We can reject the proposal, right? Reject? He can just pick another dueling format that is heavily dependent on one's cultivation realm. Everyone was anxious. Zhao Feiwu couldn't help but comment, considering Zhongshe's ability to challenge even those stronger than him, if he could make a breakthrough to clarifying turbidity realm right now, he might still stand a chance. Despite being at transcendent mortal 3-dan pinnacle, Zhongshe was able to defeat Liao Wuji, who was at clarifying turbidity realm pinnacle. If he could make the leap to clarifying turbidity realm right now, he might still stand a chance. Make a breakthrough to clarifying turbidity realm. That is easier said than done. Already half of the 10 minutes resting time is over. Do you really think Zhongsha can make a breakthrough within 5 minutes? Hearing her word, a bitter smile surfaced on Pavilion Master Kang's face as he shook his head. Cultivating was similar to ascending a mountain. It was impossible to jump to the peak instantly, one could only progress slowly a step at a time. Zhongsha had already made humongous progress in the past few months. How could he possibly just achieve a breakthrough within this 5 minutes? That's impossible. Aren't you pulling our legs? You're right. Zhao Feiwu shook her head as well. Just as she was about to rummage through her head for another solution, the young man beside her turned around and asked, "You're saying that as long as I can reach clarifying turbidity realm, I'll stand a chance against him?" That's right. Zhao Feiwu nodded her head. All right then. Give me a moment, I'll go make some breakthroughs. Zhongsha nodded. Flicking his wrist, a middle-tier spirit stone appeared in his palm, and he gripped onto it tightly with both of his hands. In an instant, it was as though someone had set his aura ablaze, and his cultivation began raising at a rapid pace. Give you a moment. It can't be that Zhongsha intends to achieve a breakthrough right now. What's so surprising about that? It's not like he has never achieved a breakthrough during crucial moments before. Hearing Zhongsha's words, everyone was stunned. Did you need to be so over the top? Making a breakthrough as and when you like, do you really think that cultivating is that easy? But before everyone could recover from their shock, they heard a buzz. Zhongsha seemed to have broken through some kind of barrier, and his aura rose swiftly. Transcendent Mortal 4 Dan. Clarifying Turbidity Realm? The mouths of Pavilion Master Kang and the others twitched. We thought that you were just saying it on a whim, but you were actually serious about it. Feeling the disruption in the spiritual energy in the air, from a distance not too far away, Bai Jianghai turned his gaze over to look at the Myriad Kingdom Alliance group. He thought that he would be able to deal with Zhongsha easily now that he had reached Consonant Spirit Realm. Who knew that the other party would actually make a breakthrough as well? Zhongsha, is there anything in the world that you can't do? No, I mustn't allow him to continue on like that. Otherwise, I'll surely lose the tournament. Gritting his teeth, Bai Jianghai dashed up to the stage, flung his sleeves, and declared, "Zhongsha, surely we should have already rested enough already. Since everyone is waiting, why don't we just start now?" Start now? He must feel threatened by Zhongsha's breakthrough. Indeed, Zhongsha has just barely made a breakthrough and he hasn't had any time to reinforce his cultivation yet. Under such circumstances, he won't be able to utilize his full strength, and it seems like Baisha intends to exploit this opening. After all, once Zhongsha succeeds in reinforcing his cultivation, things might get shaky for Baisha. Seeing Bai Jianghai proposing to resume the duel halfway through the break, the crowd frowned. Chapter 600 Finals 1. His fighting prowess would still be no different from a yin-yang realm pinnacle cultivator. Transcendent Mortal 4 Dan Clarifying Turbidity Realm. Clarify refers to the soul whereas turbid refers to the body. Usually, right after the breakthrough, the clear and the turbid would still be intermixed together as though a puddle of murky water. If Zhongsha was given an hour's time for the turbid to settle, his fighting prowess would surely soar greatly. To fight right now. His fighting prowess would still be no different from a yin-yang realm pinnacle cultivator. Before the distinction between clear and turbid is drawn, one's body and soul would remain stuck together. In the worst-case scenario, Zhongsha's fighting prowess might even dip due to this. But Baisha can't be blamed for this either. In the end, this is a tournament, and if I were in his shoes, I would have done the same as well. The champion seat of the Master Teacher Tournament has always been highly regarded. He couldn't possibly give up now that the crown is right before him. There was a significant proportion of the crowd who shook their heads upon seeing Baisha's actions. Master teachers are humans as well, and there is no human in this world that is free of desires. This final duel concerned both prestige and an invaluable high-tier spirit stone. There is no one who could possibly allow this to slip past their fingers. As such, they were able to empathize with Bai Jianghai as well. Yin-yang realm, the harmony of both yin and yang would complement and drive the growth of the other. Upon breaking through to clarifying turbidity realm, both yin and yang would amalgamate to form a puddle of murky water. With an hour of conditioning, as the clear rose and the turbid sank, the distinction between the two would gradually become clearer, thus inducing a surge in one's fighting prowess. However, as Zhongsha's opponent, how could Baisha possibly watch idly and allow him to do as he pleased? Unwilling to spare the slightest chance to his opponent, Baisha immediately called for the resumption of the duel. With this, Zhongsha's breakthrough became the very factor dragging him down. Damn it, that cowardly lad. He is completely devoid of the magnanimity a master teacher should have. Pavilion Master Kang, Su Shi, and the others were leaping in anger. Don't worry. Seeing everyone worrying for him, Zhongsha smiled, stood up, and proceeded to the stage. Zhongsha possesses overwhelming talent that allows you to rival stronger opponents. Even Wu Shi and Liao Shi were defeated by you. I respect your strength, and I wish to challenge you in a cultivation duel. I hope that you won't turn me down. Bai Jianghai raised his hands grandly as he spoke. Come. Just as the others guessed, this fellow challenged him to a cultivation duel. Zhongxian smiled lightly in response to those words. Hong Long. Hearing Zhongxian's affirmation, Bai Jianghai's eyebrows shot up, and he immediately dashed forward with a fist. He feared that something awry might happen if he were to drag the duel out, and thus, he went at Zhongsha with his full strength right from the start. The might of a consonant spirit realm diffused from the immense might of his fist, as though the ripples from a rock falling into the surface of a body of water. Before the fist could even strike, one could already feel an immense pressure weighing down on one's soul. An ordinary clarifying turbidity realm pinnacle expert possessed 1,600,000 ding of strength, while a consonant spirit realm primary stage expert harnessed a might of 2 million ding. The fist felt as though a humongous mountain charging towards one. A huge gust of wind burst into the surroundings. Even though Zhongxian's cultivation had risen immensely recently, he had never faced an expert of this caliber before. He felt his blood pumping rapidly through his body, and his meridians seemingly enlarged in anticipation of the battle that was about to come. Good. Laughing heartily, Zhongxian dashed forward and faced that fist with one of his own. Heaven's Path Divine Fist. Peng. With the collision of both fists, Zhongxian was forced 7 to 8 steps back. In order to examine the might of his physical body, Zhongxian opted not to utilize the strength derived from his soul cultivation. As such, he suffered a setback in the very first blow. Nevertheless, with a slight smile on his face, he charged forward once more. Humph. Seeing the other party charging up to him despite his cultivation still being unstable from the previous breakthrough, Bai Jianghai's eyebrows shot up. Even though he didn't hurt the other party in the previous encounter, he got a clear glimpse of the other party's current strength around 1,200,000 ding. That was the level of a clarifying turbidity realm intermediate stage expert, but it was still a long way from rivaling his current might. Zhongsha, you're indeed a formidable opponent. Your understanding of cultivation is indeed astounding. But if this is all you've got, I'll be taking the champion seat then. With a huge gust of wind, Baisha opened his fist into a palm and thrust it forcefully in a downward trajectory at Zhongxian. Hong Long. A huge palm print appeared on the stage instantaneously. As though the claws of a ferocious tiger, it fell down onto Zhongxian. It's Baisha's Great Reversal Adamantine Palm. This is a spirit middle-tier pinnacle battle technique. With this move, he is invincible even among those of the same cultivation realm. This is bad. To use his ultimate move at this start of the battle, he sure is vicious. Seeing the action on the stage, some exclaimed and some gasped in shock. Great Reversal Adamantine Palm was an extremely powerful fist art, and it was one of the battle techniques that Bai Jianghai specialized in. To use it so early into the battle, it seemed like he intended to end things swiftly. Oh! Let's see how powerful this move of yours is. Instead of dodging, Zhongxian charged up and faced it with yet another fist of his own. Peng! As the fist and the palm collided, Zhongxian's face reddened, and he was sent flying several meters away like a flying rubber ball before coming to a stop. It was a little forced for him to catch an attack of a consonant spirit realm without tapping into his soul cultivation. That's not it. This doesn't seem to be Zhongsha's true strength. While watching the duel on stage, amidst the crowd, Wu Tianhao frowned. In his previous duel with Zhongshe, he was sent flying at the first encounter. While he knew that the other party did use his own momentum against him, the strength the other party displayed definitely didn't just number up to 1,200,000 ding. How could his strength plummet by so much after a breakthrough? Indeed. Even if Zhongshe's strength is inferior to the other party, as long as he uses his sword art like he did in my duel, Bai Jiankai will surely be in for a hard time. Why is he not leveraging his strengths but facing his opponent with brute strength instead? Liao Wuji also frowned in confusion. Having exchanged blows with Zhongshe, they understood how fearsome that young man's means and might were. Considering the unbelievable capability he had shown in the previous duel, why was he foolishly crossing fists with Bai Jiankai head-on at this moment? Peng 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 peng. While they were perplexed over the matter, the duo on stage crossed blows several more times. Every single time, Zhongshe would use his full might to face the other party, only to end up knocked back pathetically each time. At this time, Zhongshe seemed no different from a brute who knew nothing but pure violence. Someone amidst the crowd suddenly shouted, "Wait. Is it just me or is Zhongshe only using a single hand? I don't think he has used his other hand throughout the battle." Hearing the shout, the crowd suddenly realized that Zhongshe had indeed only been using his right hand throughout the battle. His left hand had been hanging idly by his body, as though it was injured. A clarifying turbidity realm cultivator facing a consonant spirit realm expert with a single hand, what's wrong with him? Could he be injured? No, that can't be it. He used that hand when he was demonstrating a sword art to Liaoshe just a moment ago. Could it be that he is handicapping himself? But he's already in a disadvantageous position, why would he do so? Everyone also realized that something was wrong, and bewilderment filled their faces. Only an expert would handicap himself when facing a weaker opponent. Zhongshe was clearly the disadvantageous side, and yet, he was adamantly using only a single hand. Wait. It looks like a spirit stone. I think Zhongshe is holding a spirit stone in his left hand, a sharp-eyed master teacher exclaimed. Holding a spirit stone? It can't be. He is trying to absorb spiritual energy while battling to achieve a breakthrough. Now that you say it, it does seem to be the case. But to cultivate in the midst of a battle. Am I dreaming? I think that's really the case. Taking a closer look now, Zhongshe's aura does feel significantly stronger than before. Noticing the abnormality, the master teachers in the square stared at one another with sheer disbelief reflected in their eyes. Zhongshe was actually grabbing a spirit stone in his motionless hand. This means that he had been absorbing spiritual energy non-stop over the course of the battle to reinforce and advance his cultivation. But how was that possible? Incredible. Incredible. Naturally, Pavilion Master Kang also noticed this abnormality. A thought surfaced in his mind, and in an instant, his heart suddenly quickened in agitation. In clarifying turbidity realm, the clearer the distinction between the clear and the turbid, the stronger one's cultivation becomes. But to do so would require significant amount of time. Zhongshe knows that he's short on time. The reason why he faced his Baisha's attack with brute force instead of skill is not because he's arrogant, but that he intends to use the might from the other party's blows to quicken the separation process and raise his cultivation. Forcefully quicken the separation process of clear and turbid? This. How in the world does he intend to do it? Su She and Ling She had been trapped in the clarifying turbidity realm for a long time now, but they were still unable to advance to pinnacle tier. Upon hearing that such a method actually existed, they widened their eyes as though they had seen a ghost. Bai Jiankai has also barely reached consonant spirit realm. Thus, his control over his soul and physical body is still incomplete. As a result, his attacks are tinged with both soul energy and zhenqi. Zhongshe is exploiting this by facing the other party's zhenqi and soul with his own zhenqi and soul respectively. Through this, he can forcefully jolt his body and soul apart. A combination of shock and admiration shrouded Pavilion Master Kang's face. If Zhongshe was a puddle of murky water before, through tapping into the might of the other party's cultivation, he has already jolted the turbid and clear apart, reinforcing his cultivation. In fact, His cultivation is even rising swiftly at the moment, making use of his opponent's attacks to jolt the turbid and clear apart to raise his cultivation. This is too exaggerated. Su She and the others widened their eyes in shock. The other master teachers who came to the same conclusion also had looks of disbelief on their faces. To exploit the opponent's flaws to raise one's cultivation in the midst of a battle. If Bai Jianghai were to realize it, he would surely be spurting blood at this moment. He had put his full might into his blows, only to be used by the other party as a whetstone. When I was watched Bai Shi achieve a breakthrough in his previous duel, I was impressed by his guts and mental fortitude. But after seeing Zhong Shi's performance, I realized that his achievement is really nothing much to brag about. Indeed. In the end, achievements are relative. Achieving a breakthrough on the spot against cultivating constantly in the midst of crossing blows, there's really no comparing the two. To use the might of one's opponent to temper oneself. The slightest mistake could possibly lead to tragic outcomes. Probably only Zhong Shi has the guts to do so. Since they were able to see through Zhong Shi's intentions, naturally, they also understood the dangers in his actions. When facing a stronger opponent, even if one were to face them with one's full strength, it would still be hard to stand one's ground. On the other hand, Zhong Shi was actually multitasking in the battle, cultivating constantly as he crossed blows with the other party. How brave and confident of his abilities must he be to actually employ such a tactic? Even though they were witnessing the sight personally, they still couldn't help but feel frenzied. It's fortunate that I lost in a single move. Otherwise, I would only have embarrassed myself more. Wu Tianhao smiled bitterly. Liao Wuji also nodded in agreement. The both of them did feel indignant losing to Zhong Shi, but after seeing this sight, they realized that their swift defeat was actually a blessing instead. To be cooperating as though a fool while your opponent uses you as a cultivation tool, could that be the pinnacle of humiliation? Soon, Bai Jianghai also came to a realization, and he roared furiously, "Damn it, how dare you take me for a whetstone? Don't even dream about it." He thought that if he were to fight the other party before he reinforced his cultivation, the other party would surely panic, resulting in an easy victory for him. Who could have thought that he would end up being used as a whetstone instead? The immensely stifling frustration in his heart left him on the verge of going insane. "Damn you!" Bellowing angrily, his aura surged instantaneously, breaking through the bottleneck of consonant spirit realm primary stage. Supreme Demented Demon Fist. This is bad. The face of an elder of Gazing River sect darkened. Chapter 601 Finals 2 Supreme Demented Demon Fist was a secret art passed down within the lineage of the Gazing River sect. It was never made known to outsiders, and once executed, one's strength would instantaneously rise by a small cultivation realm for a short period of time. However, one's original cultivation would suffer a sharp fall afterward. It wasn't easy for Bai Jianghai to reach consonant spirit realm. If his cultivation were to regress due to this duel, not only it be a pity for Bai Jianghai, it would be a huge loss to the Gazing River sect as well. One must know that of the 28 powers in the surroundings, the number of consonant spirit realm experts was truly limited. At the very least, it numbered below 100. Not to mention, there was only a total of 5 of them in Gazing River sect. An additional one to the lineup could bolster their forces significantly, deterring their enemies while elevating their position. Besides, the other party was a top-notch genius who had broken innumerable records. If anything were to happen to him, how would their Gazing River sect face the Master Teacher Pavilion? Insane. That fellow has gone insane, a pale-faced elder uttered hoarsely. Can we stop him? Another elder asked, but the only response he received was the shaking of heads from his peers. The rules of the Master Teacher Tournament prohibited anyone from interfering with an ongoing duel in view of fairness. Zhong Shi will have to deal with this himself. Let's hope that he can produce a miracle once more. Indeed. But still, I fear that it's impossible for a clarifying turbidity realm primary stage to match a consonant spirit realm intermediate stage. Those are two completely different levels. There's little hope, unless... Unless what? Unless... Zhong Shi summons his tamed beast, Demon Sank Beast. Demon Sank Beast. You're right, why didn't I think of that? As a beast tamer, Zhongshe has the right to bring his tamed beast to battle. With demon-sank beasts' consonant spirit realm cultivation, defeating Bai Shi would be a walk in the park. Your words make sense, but will Zhongshe do so? The person who offered the suggestion fell silent. Even though Zhongshe might seem like a casual person, he had shown that he would never compromise on the fairness of a duel. Since he had agreed to the duel, he would only use his own strength to triumph over his opponent. It was impossible for him to summon his tamed beast to assist him. Don't think too much, let's just watch on. Perhaps a miracle might really happen. Everyone continued watching the duel nervously. Master-teacher tournament emphasizes heavily on fairness. Many people already felt contempt for Bai Jianghai due to him exploiting the other party's weakness and employing a mutually assured destruction technique now only fanned the crowd's displeasure. On the contrary, Zhongshe, who fought on valiantly despite being in such a dangerous position, won everyone's admiration instead. While the crowd was worrying for Zhongshe, the duel on the stage had also reached its climax. With the execution of the supreme demented demon fist, Bai Jianghai's cultivation surged, and his maximum strength rose to 2,400,000 ding. His attacks wielded such immense might behind them that it created a feeling of helplessness in those facing it. You came just on time. Without the slightest hint of panic or fear, Zhongshen's eyes gleamed in excitement as he charged forward with a howl. Peng 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 peng. The air in the surroundings billowed. The duo crossed blows, and to the crowd's astonishment, they were actually equally matched. Zhongshe's cultivation is indeed increasing continuously, clarifying turbidity realm primary stage, intermediate stage, advanced stage. How much time has passed since the start of the battle? Pinnacle. He's already at clarifying turbidity realm pinnacle. Has it been 10 breaths? Or is it 20? He actually advanced from clarifying turbidity realm primary stage to pinnacle in this period of time? How can this be possible? Everyone thought that with the activation of the supreme demented demon fist, Zhongshe was doomed. Who could have known that not only did he manage to stand his ground, he was even getting stronger every moment. In just a short 20 breaths, he actually advanced all the way from clarifying turbidity realm primary stage to pinnacle. It felt just like a dream even though they were witnessing the sight with their own eyes. This was way too fearsome. There were many who spent decades to progress from clarifying turbidity realm primary stage to pinnacle, and yet, in less than a single minute, Zhongshe had managed to achieve the very same feat while reinforcing his cultivation on top of that. His rate of progress would leave those who dared to proclaim themselves as geniuses ashamed. Hongshe's face also paled upon seeing the sight, and he couldn't help but mutter to himself, to use the pressure from the soul and junchi of a consonant spirit realm to temper one's body and quicken the separation of turbid and clear so as to raise one's cultivation, even I am miles apart from him in terms of guts and confidence. With his eye of discernment, he was able to see through Zhongshen's intentions as well. For a clarifying turbidity realm cultivator to face a consonant spirit realm expert without fear and even use the latter to temper oneself and break through one's bottleneck, it was hard to tell whether even Pavilion Master Mo would be capable of such a feat. Hongshe knew that Zhongshe would surely excel in all aspects as a master teacher. After all, with guidance of a potential 8-star master teacher, it would be hard to believe that he was ordinary. But it seemed like he was still underestimating the latter. Even the latter's seeming weakness, his cultivation was also unmatched by others as well. It was as if they were people from two different worlds. It seems like he is the champion of this tournament. Only at this moment did Hongshe's floating heart finally find ground. Pavilion Master Mo Gaoyuan had taken out one high-tier spirit stone to get on good terms with Zhongshe and Yangshe. Fortunately, Hongshe had managed to accomplish the implied mission that he had for him. As expected of the student of an 8-star master teacher, Zhongshe was truly superior in all aspects, even his fighting prowess and mental fortitude. While anxiety and nervousness overwhelmed the crowd below, on the stage, Zhongshen had reached a very profound state of mind. In truth, the plan to make use of the other party's might to advance his cultivation was just a thought he had all of a sudden. He thought that it would be extremely difficult to succeed, But the results turned out to be much better than he thought. As concentrated zhenqi flowed through his meridians like a torrent, Zhongxian's aura and strength increased qualitatively. Under normal circumstances, even when using a middle-tier spirit stone, it would take at least 2 hours before he could reach clarifying turbidity realm pinnacle. But this time, not only did he reach clarifying turbidity realm pinnacle within an extremely short period of time, on top of that, his zhenqi capacity had increased significantly, and his ability to drive zhenqi was also enhanced. All of these would be equivalent to several months of effort, thus saving him a lot of time on cultivation. At Yin-Yang Realm Pinnacle, he possessed 1 million ding of strength. At this moment, it had increased by twofold to 2 million ding, factoring in the strength of 1,600,000 ding derived from his soul cultivation, it totaled up to 3,600,000 ding. With such might, he could kill even a consonant spirit realm pinnacle expert with a single punch. After all, a normal consonant spirit realm cultivator would only possess 2 million ding of might in primary stage, 2,400,000 ding in intermediate stage, 2,800,000 ding in advanced stage, and 3,200,000 ding in pinnacle power. While he was enjoying the changes his body was undergoing, Bai Jianghai was about to go insane. Under normal circumstances, his opponent should have been subdued after executing his ultimate technique. Who knew that the more he fought, the colder his heart became. He had tried all means and tricks, but it seemed as though the other party could deal with his attacks leisurely as though they were nothing. This made him feel extremely embarrassed, and he found his tolerance hitting its limit. "I'll destroy you." Roaring furiously, he utilized every ounce of energy contained within his body without any reservations. The rampaging zhenqi gushed out as though a torrent, swallowing Zhongxian whole in an instant. "This is bad." Hong Shi, Pavilion Master Kang, and the others narrowed their eyes. This was no longer just a duel anymore. With such frenzied offense, this was already at the level of a life-and-death combat. The slightest mistake could lead to the death of one party. This is madness. He has gone mad. The faces of the elders of Gazing River sect turned ghastly pale. Even though they weren't present in the encounter with Yangshe, they had heard some secret intelligence from their sources and knew that Zhongshe's background was extraordinary. Otherwise, given how many artifacts and humans he had broken, he would have already been stripped of his rights as a participant of this tournament. It wasn't just once that they had seen the frenzied expression of the usually composed Hongshe in the course of this tournament, and the fact that he still allowed Zhongshe to continue despite all of the trouble he had caused affirmed their doubts. To actually try to kill a figure with such powerful backing with all your might, what else can you be if not insane? Just as everyone was panicking, Zhongxian, whose consciousness had finally returned from feeling his internal changes, noticed the rampaging energy before him. Thus, he casually waved his palm. Boom! A cloud of dust flew up. But even amidst the cloud of dust, Su, Bai Jianghai, who had channeled all of his strength against Zhongxian, was sent flying as though a mosquito struck by a fly swat. In an instant, just like Wu Tianhao from before, he flew into the sky. Ah! What happened? I've no idea too. I saw Zhongshe casually waving his palm and Baisha was suddenly sent flying. Everyone was dumbstruck. After so many matches, they had a clear gauge of Zhongshe's strength already. Going by rational deduction, he should have been pummeled to the point that his head would have swollen to the size reminiscent to that of a pig's head already. Yet, not only was he completely fine, the consonant spirit realm Baisha was sent flying instead. What in the world happened? When did Zhongshe become so mighty? This. Seeing Baisha sent flying into the distance, Zhongxian finally awakened fully from his trance, and his eyes widened in shock. Scratching his head helplessly, he was extremely tempted to cry. He quickly tried to explain himself, "I didn't do it intentionally." His concentration had lapsed for a moment due to his breakthrough, thus resulting in him overexerting his strength. On top of that, he also didn't expect that seemingly formidable fellow a moment ago would be so weak. What in the world was this? It was one thing for him to injure those participants before, but now, he even sent his opponent of the finals flying with a single slap. At this point, all he could see of the other party was a black dot. If he were to say that he didn't do it intentionally, would anyone believe him? Bai Shi. Seeing the genius of their sect disappearing further and further from sight, the few elders whose heart was hanging a moment ago heaved a huge sigh of relief. Hong Shi and everyone else, it's due to the lack of discipline in our Gazing River sect that we nearly caused a huge calamity. We'll bring Bai Jiankai back now and teach him a lesson immediately. We're too embarrassed to accept second place. One of the elders in charge of Gazing River sect stood up and apologized in embarrassment. In the Master-Teacher tournament, everyone knew the accepted limits and stopped appropriately. On the other hand, the genius of their sect actually tried to kill his opponent. If not for Zhong Shi achieving a breakthrough at the very last moment, he might have actually died. With such lack in decorum, it could be said that they had infringed on the rules of the tournament. Even if no one spoke a word, they would still be too embarrassed to remain here. This. Zhong Xian was taken aback. What in the world are you talking about? If that's the case, shouldn't my right as a participant have been revoked for many times already? Elder, you are being too harsh on yourself. Bai Shi only lost his calmness and struck a little harshly due to my provocative actions. In truth, he hasn't caused any damage at all. Why don't we just call it quits? You're willing to let the matter go? Thank you, Zhong Shi. Hearing Zhong Shi plead on behalf of their sect, the faces of the elders of Gazing River sect reddened in agitation, and the entire group knelt to the floor. Did you see that? This is the magnanimity a master-teacher should have. Bai Jiankai watched tearfully in the air. Magnanimity? I would love to have it as well. But to do so, I would have to defeat this monster first. Chapter 602, Combat Soul Constitution. Alright. Since the champion of our tournament is already decided, let's move on to determine the other placings. After calming down the agitated crowd, Hong Shi continued on with the tournament. At the current moment, only the first and second places were decided. The tournament still had to go on to determine the third to the 10th place. After all the excitement, the crowd was lacking in interest for the duels that followed. 2 hours later, the top 10 places for the Master-Teacher tournament were finally out. Wei Yuqing, who suffered a tragic defeat against Zhong Xian, performed extraordinarily well in the remaining duels and successfully advanced into the top 10. Qin Lei, who was eliminated by Ruo Huan Gongzi back then, also displayed spectacular abilities and clinched 9th place. Actually, if not for Zhong Xian's interference, he would be at least in the top 5 placing. Nevertheless, being in the 9th place, he was at least granted the opportunity to become a student of Hongyuan Master-Teacher Academy as well, thus making this trip worthwhile. Zhong Shi, here is your prize. Once the placings were confirmed, the prizes were given out. The first place was given a high-tier spirit stone, an opportunity to study at Hongyuan Master-Teacher Academy, and 3 days to cultivate in the cleansing lake. While presenting the prize to Zhong Xian, Hong Shi sent a telepathic message over. Zhong Shi, the high-tier spirit stone is a private gift from Pavilion Master Mo Gaoyuan to the participant in the first place. Since Pavilion Master Mo intended to express his goodwill to Zhong Shi and Yang Shi, naturally, his name should be made known to the other party. Otherwise, wouldn't everything be done in vain? Only then did Zhong Xian come to a realization. This explained why the prize this year was much more generous than previous years. In truth, it wasn't too difficult to guess this. Given Yang Shi's astounding means, it was natural that Pavilion Master Mo would want to get on his good side. In any case, this matter was beneficial to Zhong Xian. After all, that was a high-tier spirit stone. Its value was equivalent to 10,000 middle-tier spirit stone. If not to embarrass himself, Zhong Xian would have surely opened the jade box then and started examining the spirit stone already. Placing the prize carefully in his storage ring, Zhong Xian was filled with agitation and excitement. With a high-tier spirit stone in his possession, his future cultivation would become much easier. At least in the short run, he wouldn't have to worry about spiritual energy anymore. After distributing the prizes, Hong Shi announced, "All right. The Master-Teacher tournament has come to a conclusion. The top 3 of the tournament shall follow me to Huanyu Empire tomorrow to claim their prize of cultivating in the cleansing lake." Tomorrow? So soon? There's no choice. Huanyu Empire is more than 1,000,000 kilometers away, and if we don't rush there, we might miss the opening of the cleansing lake. If so, we might miss this opportunity. That's true. The cleansing lake opens at the start of the year for each opening, and there's barely a month until then. If we don't rush now, we might fail to make it in time. Upon hearing from Hong Shi that they were leaving tomorrow, the participants were astonished. However, they soon understood his intentions. The cleansing lake was the most valuable treasure of the Huanyu Empire's royalty, as well as the foundation of its establishment. The grounds would be opened once every decade, and it wasn't too long to it now. If they didn't hurry now, they might just miss this opportunity by. All right, you should return to make preparations. We'll set off tomorrow noon. Hong Shi waved his hands to dismiss the group. By now, it was already late at night, and the time left for them to prepare was less than a day. I should also make some preparations. Zhong Xian stood up. There were many things he had to deal with, and time was tight. Pavilion Master Kang, thank you for your care during this period of time. This is a cultivation technique my teacher prepared for you, and if you were to cultivate it accordingly, it should assist you in reaching consonant spirit realm. Flicking his wrist, a book appeared in Zhong Xian's palm as he passed it over. Pavilion Master Kang had really helped him a lot during this period of time, especially the trip to the Glacier Plain Court. Without his help, it would be impossible for him to nurture his soul sufficiently so as to divide into two and successfully forge his clone. At the same time, Zhao Ya wouldn't have met with such a rare opportunity either. As such, Zhong Xian specially compiled a cultivation technique manual to deal with the various flaws the other party suffered from. As long as the other party cultivated along with it, it would just be a matter of time before he reached consonant spirit realm. Reach consonant spirit realm? This cultivation technique was prepared by Yang Shi. Pavilion Master Kang's breathing immediately hastened, and his eyes reddened in agitation. Yang Shi, an existence likely to be an 8-star master teacher. Just receiving a single pointer from such a person was a huge blessing in itself. To think that he would even have a cultivation technique created just for him, he truly had no idea how he could ever repay this favor. Putong. Pavilion Master Kang kneeled onto the floor, and with a grim expression, he kowtowed 8 times toward Zhong Xian's residence before standing up. Su Shi and Ling Shi, these are yours. Of course, Zhong Xian couldn't possibly forget about these two. Without them, he wouldn't have been able to participate in the Master Teacher Tournament. After receiving the cultivation technique, Su Shi and Ling Shi also thanked him profusely. Zhong Xian had always remembered grudges and favors clearly. Zhong Shi, can I follow you to Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy? Knowing that Zhong Xian was about to leave, Zhao Feiwu's eyes reddened. This young man had solved her ailment, granting her a whole new life. Gratitude, along with the experiences at Shenyuan Kingdom, Soul Oracle Tomb, and such, had left her with an indescribable emotion toward the latter. Just that, she was too embarrassed to face her own emotions. But now that separation was right before them, she couldn't hold herself back anymore. After pondering for a moment, Zhong Xian said, "Your cultivation is still too low, you might stumble into a lot of trouble if you were to head there now. It would be safer if you study under Pavilion Master Kang here." After which, he turned to the elder beside him and said grimly, "Pavilion Master Kang, I'll be entrusting Princess Feiwu to you." "He, Zhong Shi, you need not worry. I'll take her in as my direct disciple and teach her well. I won't let you or Yang Shi down." Pavilion Master Kang gave his word. "Thank you." Zhong Xian clasped his fist. Actually, this was also another reason why he gave Pavilion Master Kang the cultivation technique manual. Along the way, Zhao Feiwu had helped him a lot. As the daughter of the Alliance head, she was unlikely to care much about fortune, resources, or so. Rather than that, it would be more practical to help her find a good teacher. This way, she would be able to live the life she wanted. And Pavilion Master Kang was clearly the most suitable choice. "Thank you, Zhong Shi." Hearing the arrangements, Zhao Feiwu flashed a bitter smile and thanked Zhong Shi. She found the entire matter hard to accept, but knowing that Zhong Shi was doing this with her welfare at heart, she eventually nodded her head. Zhong Shi was destined to achieve great things in the future. A small, little princess of the Alliance like her couldn't possibly compare to him. No matter how reluctant she was, she knew she had to let go. After bidding Pavilion Master Kang and the others farewell, Zhongxian returned to his residence. The moment he entered, he saw Mo Hunsheng walking over with widened strides. Zhongsha. Mo Hunsheng clasped his fist. How is it? Zhongxian asked. He had asked the latter regarding Lu Chong's condition even before joining the master-teacher tournament. After a day of effort, the latter should have some results by now. Reporting to young Master Lu Chong has just finished his cultivation, and I've taken a look at his condition. If I'm not mistaken, it's a unique constitution among soul oracles. Combat soul constitution, Mo Hunsheng said. Unique constitution? Zhongxian was perplexed. If the latter really had a unique constitution, the Library of Heaven's Path should have already long detected it. How could it elude him? Combat soul constitution is not something one is born with. Usually, it is developed after a life-and-death experience or a wave of immense emotions. Such a constitution is extremely rare and cannot be emulated by any means. If I'm not mistaken, young Master Lu Chong has only just awakened it. Mo Hunsheng explained. Let's go over to take a look. Nodding his head, Zhongxian walked into the courtyard. Not too far from the corridor, Lu Chong was cultivating while standing. His soul was dancing in the air, and it seemed to carry a majestic aura to it. Transcendent mortal tude and soul? Zhongxian's eyes widened in shock. When he left earlier this morning, the latter was still at Zhongsha realm only. How could he become so powerful over a single day? Soul cultivation was similar to Zhenqi cultivation in the sense that it was slow and accumulative. To actually break through 4 cultivation realms Jizuan, half-transcension, prolonged longevity, and origin energy realm in a single day, that was really way too fast. Flaws. Perplexed, Zhongxian willed. Wang. With a soft buzz, a book appeared in the Library of Heaven's Path. Quickly flipping it open, Zhongxian swiftly browsed through the content and froze. Lu Chong was indeed different from before. Just as Mo Hunsheng said, he had awoken the combat soul constitution. But from the looks of it, this awakening seemed to be incomplete. Recalling what he encountered in the other party's consciousness, a thought emerged in Zhongxian's head. This is probably what I saw back then. Back then, when he used the soul rouse incense to wake up the other party's soul, he had seen a gigantic figure lying in the other party's consciousness. Thinking about it now, that should be the result of the combat soul constitution. Regarding this constitution, how can it be awakened? Zhongxian glanced at the soulless metal humanoid before him. After a moment of contemplation, Mo Hunsheng replied, reporting to young master, it's extremely troublesome to awaken such a constitution totally. It might require a visit to the ancient domain of soul oracles. Ancient domain of soul oracles? Zhongxian was stunned. Mo Hunsheng hesitated for a moment before he said, yes, that is the place where soul oracles originate from. In the ancient domain of soul oracles, one can find the energy of ancient souls, that is a crucial catalyst to awakening the combat soul constitution completely. There's no other way around it. Ancient domain of soul oracles? Where is that? It is at the utmost east of the continent. I also don't know exactly how far it is from here. Mo Hunsheng scratched his head. You don't know how far it is from here? Zhongxian's face darkened. If it was too far, how was he supposed to head there? The master-teacher continent was incomparably vast, and even several 100,000 kilometers would require many days of flight. Yet, from Mo Hunsheng's tone, it was apparent that he meant a distance of dozens or even 100 million kilometers. Without several years of traveling, it was impossible to cover such distance. Actually, if young master trusts me, I can take young master Lu Chong there. This way, it won't interrupt your cultivation while allowing young master Lu Chong to grow swiftly, Mo Hunsheng said. You'll take him there? Zhongxian fell into deep contemplation. If he wanted to climb up as a master teacher, he would have to remain in public view. Furthermore, with the threat known as the innate fetal poison looming above him, spending several years searching for the ancient domain of soul oracles was clearly too much of a luxury for him to afford. However, if he were to delay Lu Chong's growth by forcing the other party to follow him, it would indeed be unfair for the other party. The ideal situation was indeed to split up. We'll see what he thinks. After a moment of thought, Zhongxian felt that Lu Chong should have the right to decide. Thus, he interrupted Lu Chong's cultivation and explained the matter to him. Hearing Zhongxian's words, the young man nodded his head earnestly. Teacher, I wish to go to the ancient domain of soul oracles. He shared the same thoughts as Zhao Ya when she made her decision back then. He knew that he would only be a burden if he were to remain by his teacher's side. If he were to grasp this opportunity, he might be able to be of true use to his teacher in the future. He didn't wish to remain as a burden to his teacher. Since you've made up your mind, I'll respect your decision. Mo Hunsheng, I'll be leaving Lu Chong to your care. Seeing that Lu Chong had made his decision, Zhongxian sighed deeply before nodding his head. Chapter 603 Lecture 1 There would eventually come a day when a student would have to leave their teacher. Zhongxian understood this fact, and he knew he would have to part with his students one day. Ever since the incident with Zhao Ya, he had been preparing himself mentally. But even so, he still found himself gripped with reluctance when faced with the situation. This is a surge of zhenqi from me. It should help you if you face danger. Pulling Lu Chong to a room, Zhongxian began delegating some matters to him. His plight was very different from that of Zhao Ya. Zhao Ya would be taken care of by the Glacier Plain Court, and it was unlikely that she would be in any danger. On the other hand, Lu Chong and Mo Hunsheng would be traversing across the continent to search for a place which might not even exist. The journey would be fraught with danger, and this surge of zhenqi may help to protect them, even if just once. Demon Sank, you shall follow Lu Chong. After instructing some matters, Zhongxian called Demon Sank Beast over. While safety shouldn't be a problem given that a transcendent mortal 9-dan expert, Mo Hunsheng, was escorting him, they would still require an aerial spirit beast for their travel. As a transcendent mortal 5-dan spirit beast, Demon Sank Beast should prove to be useful for them. After settling all of the issues he could foresee, he brought Lu Chong to Wang Ying and the others for them to bid their farewell. 2 of the original 6 students have left, and everyone couldn't help but feel slightly depressed. After settling the arrangements regarding Lu Chong, Zhongxian went to look for his junior, garden owner Shui. For the time being, the latter didn't have any intention of heading to a higher-tier empire, so she wasn't going to tag along with Zhongxian. By the time everything was done, the sun was already up in the sky, and it was soon going to be the meeting time with Hongshe and the others. Let's go. With everything settled, Zhongxian proceeded to the square near the Alliance head residence with Zheng Yang, Wang Ying, and the other students beside him. Since he had promised to conduct a lecture, he decided to settle this too before leaving. However, before he could even reach the square, he could already see an uncountable number of people in the square, stretching all the way to the limits of his eyes. Sect leader Hu, you're here to listen to Zhongshe's lecture as well? Well, this is the first champion of the Master Teacher Tournament who won with such a huge landslide. Since he is going to conduct a lecture, there's no way I can miss this. Indeed. There are several centuries of history behind the Master Teacher Tournament already, and Zhongxian is the first person to achieve such astounding records. Look, even Sect Leader Ji and Sect Leader Liu are here. You're right. Even Hongshe's lectures wouldn't be met with such popularity. I don't know about how popular Hongshe's lectures are, but at the very least, we half 5-star master teachers wouldn't be able to match up to this. There are so many people here that I can't help but feel envious. Speaking of which, I tried putting myself into Zhongshe's position in the tournament, but I realized that I wouldn't be able to emulate his achievements at all. To think that a person who has just passed the 4-star master teacher examination would be able to achieve feats beyond that of a half 5-star master teacher. It is no wonder why he enjoys such exploding popularity. The entire square was full of life. All of them are here to listen to my lecture. Zhongxian blinked his eyes in shock. In his view, it would already be a huge achievement if several thousand people were to attend his lecture on the basics of cultivation. Never could he have expected that he would be able to rally so many people here. For a moment, he even suspected that there was a second, hidden stage to the Master Teacher Tournament that he was unaware of. How many people are there here? 100,000? 1,000,000. Not to mention. There were many who were hanging on walls and standing on trees as though ninjas as well. And what is with those aerial savage beasts in the sky? I heard that those who were unable to get a seat in your lecture went to rent savage beasts from the beast hall. Pavilion Master Kang explained awkwardly. I understand the part about aerial savage beast, but what about those grounded ones? Zhongxian couldn't help but ask about them. He could understand the reason behind the mass of aerial savage beasts in the sky, but by the side of the square, there was also a bunch of land savage beasts lying down. There was the saber-toothed tiger, half-limbed gale wolf, sable ape. What were they doing here? After hearing that you were going to conduct a lecture, Hall Master Han Chong of the Beast Hall sent all of the savage beasts and spirit beasts in the Beast Hall over to support you, Pavilion Master Kang said. Zhongxian. This could be called support as well. Just the beast tamers would suffice. What kind of support are you giving me through sending this bunch of savage beasts over? Actually, Zhongshi's reputation is simply too great. Knowing that you are going to conduct a lecture, there is no one who is willing to be left out, Pavilion Master Kang said. In truth, Hall Master Han had no choice either. After the Master-Teacher tournament, Zhongshi's reputation exploded. Everyone wanted to listen to the lecture that was to be conducted by this top-notch genius. Even the intelligent savage beasts and spirit beasts couldn't hold themselves back. And thus, such a sight occurred. The square outside the Alliance head residence was extremely vast, and it could contain even 1,000,000 people at once. And yet, at this very moment, it was so cramped that there was hardly room for one to fidget. Even Pavilion Master Kang himself found such a sight unbelievable. He had conducted similar public lectures before, and with 50,000 people participating, that event was proclaimed to have changed the history of Myriad Kingdom Alliance Master-Teacher Pavilion. Never in his dreams did he expect the popularity of Zhongshi's lecture to be so over the top. There were indeed vast differences even among fellow humans. Forget it. It doesn't matter how many people are here, I just have to conduct my lecture properly. Shaking his head, Zhongxian decided not to think too much into it. Thus, he raised his foot and began heading toward the stage at the very center of the square. Li Hanbing was 16 this year, and he was a beggar. He had been an orphan as far as he could remember, and he had always been a subject of mockery and a target for humiliation. His greatest dream was to become an expert, but what a pity it was. His humble background disallowed him from obtaining any cultivation technique or cultivation resources. As the saying goes, the poor study and the rich train. Without sufficient resources to back up one's cultivation and the guidance of teachers, it was difficult for him to make any progress. As such, despite being 16 this year, he was still trapped in Fighter 1 Danjushi realm, unable to make any progress. Most probably, he would remain this way for his entire life. He thought that it would be impossible for him to ever listen to the lecture of a master teacher. But one day, he suddenly heard that an incredibly talented master teacher known as Zhongshi was going to conduct a public lecture on the basics of cultivation. Upon hearing this news, he rushed to the square the night before to secure a spot for himself before waiting patiently. It's starting. After a long wait, he saw a figure walking majestically up the stage. This Zhongshi doesn't seem much older than me. He thought that the champion of the master-teacher tournament would at least be in his late 30s, but the latter didn't even seem to have reached his 20s yet. He couldn't help but feel a tinge of disappointment. He had waited for an entire day, but at this moment, he feared that he might have only wasted his time. Would his hopes fall flat once again, just as they had many times before? In truth, the Master-Teacher Pavilion would organize public lectures every month, but the content tended to be rather profound. An orphan like him who had never gone through proper education wouldn't understand a single word of it, and thus, wouldn't benefit from it as well. He had tried attending those several times, but he quickly realized that it was futile. On the contrary, he lost confidence instead. There were some master teachers, who like proud academics, wished to be recognized and wanted to be respected for their work. There was no problem with this, but they treated these public lectures as a platform to showcase their knowledge, and if the content of their lecture was too simple, it would seem as though they were incapable. As such thoughts proliferated among the master teachers, the culture behind the public lectures seemed to change as well. Earnest cultivators attending the lecture soon realized that those lectures were impractical for them. Considering the young age and astounding accomplishments of the person on the stage, it was likely he would just be yet another proud master teacher fishing for glory through this public lecture. It seemed that he would only be disappointed once again. Seeking the heavens path can be viewed as an arrow placed against a bowstring. Too high, it has to be lowered; too low, it has to be raised; too taut, it has to be loosened; too loose, it has to be tightened. Heaven's path is about supplementing one's deficiencies with one's strengths. Who? A voice sounded in his ear. Even though he was 1,000 meters away from the stage, every single word of Zhongshe reached his ears with resounding clarity. As expected, I don't understand it at all. Listening attentively, he realized that this public lecture was no different from those he had attended before. He couldn't understand a word at all. In the end, all master teachers were cut from the same cloth. Public lectures were just platforms for them to boast about their knowledge. It mattered not to them whether it was meaningful to their audience or not. And those audiences were also equally hypocritical. For fear of exposing their ignorance, instead of questioning the lecturer, they feigned understanding and even showered the lecturer with praises. After all, if one turned out to be the only unknowledgeable one in the room, how embarrassing would that be? This is simply human nature. Shaking his head in disappointment, Li Hanbing stood up and prepared to leave. But right after he took his first step, he suddenly felt a jolt in his acupoint. Following which, he felt a numbing sensation in his Baihai acupoint, and a huge wave of spiritual energy was drawn in from the surroundings and circulated continuously throughout his body. Catcha! Catcha! With a crisp sound, he noticed something similar to small lake appearing within his lower abdomen. This is Dantian. Li Hanbing's eyes widened in shock, and his body trembled. After breaking through Fighter 1 Danjushi realm, one would form a Dantian in one's lower abdomen, allowing one to store spiritual energy. Li Hanbing had been trapped in Jushi realm for a very long time, and he thought that this would remain so. Who could have known that a few words from Zhongshe would actually induce a breakthrough within him? But I don't understand the content of the lecture at all. Why am I still able to achieve a breakthrough? Li Hanbing was stunned. He didn't understand a single word of what Zhongshe said, so how could he have suddenly achieved a breakthrough? Shouldn't the lecture be ineffective to his cultivation if he couldn't understand a word of it? Raising his head to look around, he saw several beggars, who had come here along with him, sitting on the floor with smiles overflowing with happiness on their faces. Their auras had also grown significantly stronger. Heaven's path is about supplementing one's deficiencies with one's strengths. So, this is the law of nature. It means that only if we cultivate alongside the flow of nature can we improve quickly. Suddenly, a thought emerged in his head. Even though the other party's words were extremely profound, completely incomprehensible to him, but for some reason, he could understand the intent behind the other party's words as though they were conceptualizing right before him. Heaven's path, the law of nature. Quickly sitting down, he felt his spiritual energy flowing slowly through his dantian. Catcha! Catcha! A crisp echo sounded from his body again and yet again as his cultivation soared non-stop. Dantian Realm Primary Stage. Dantian Realm Intermediate Stage. Dantian Realm Advanced Stage. His cultivation rose quickly as though he were a balloon and someone was blowing into him. He still couldn't understand the other party's words, but for some reason, he was still able to gain a much deeper understanding of what cultivation was, and it aligned with his own comprehension of it as well. This is the lecture of a true master teacher. As though having drunk a heavenly brew, a smile slowly crept onto Li Hanbing's face. His happiness wasn't derived from his rise in cultivation, but the knowledge that was slowly building up within him. He could actually understand the intent behind the other party's words clearly. It was as if the lecturer, Zhongshe, was conducting a one-to-one lesson for him. As he listened on, the spiritual energy in his body continued circulating, and all of a sudden, his body jolted like the Fighter 3 Danjunchi realm, reach. Junchi realm could be considered as one's official inauguration as a cultivator. To think that a beggar like him could actually reach such a level as well. Zhongshe, from today onward, you will be the only teacher I will ever recognize. Li Hanbing kneeled onto the floor as he made a solemn vow. Chapter 604 Lecture 2 In the vast main hall of the Fleeting Cloud Sect's base in Myriad Kingdom City, sect leader Luo Huang glanced at the young man before him. Others might not have realized anything in the previous duel, but don't think you can hide it from me. I've been your teacher for more than a decade now. I knew that I wouldn't be able to hide it from you. Smiling bitterly, Luo Xian admitted to it frankly. I did hold myself back in the duel with Bai Jiankai. For what reason? Sect leader Luo Huang asked. Given Zhong Shi's ability, there's no doubt that he would be able to progress on to the finals. If I were to defeat Bai Shi, I would have to face him. As teacher knows, our relationship with Zhong Shi is rather poor at the moment. Rather than worsen the conflict with him, I might as well forfeit and allow the Gazing River sect to deal with this trouble. Luo Xian clasped his fist, and with an apologetic look, he continued, Teacher, please pardon me for making such a decision of my own accord. Good. The fact that you were able to think that far means that you've already grown up. Sect leader Luo Huang nodded his head in satisfaction. Don't worry. Not only am I not blaming you for that, I even want to commend you for your decision. To be able to weigh the pros and cons in the midst of a tournament and make such a decision is indeed no easy feat regardless of whether it is Zhong Shi or Yang Shi. They aren't people we can afford to cross. It's best that we stay out of their path for the moment and slowly mend our relationship with them in the future. Yes. I was also thinking the same. Luo Xian nodded. Seeing his student becoming so sensible, putting the welfare of the sect before his own pride, sect leader Luo Huang felt gratified. Stroking his beard, he asked, So, you've seen Zhong Shi's capabilities with your eyes. What do you think about it? Zhong Shi. A sharp gleam flashed across Luo Xian's eyes. I can't deny that he's a difficult opponent. There are even several aspects which I am inferior to him in. But if I had proceeded to the finals and challenged him in a duel, I don't think that I would have lost. Oh. Sect leader Luo Huang glanced at Luo Xian in interest. Taking the round on knowledge impartation for example, even though he seemed to have fared impressively, if I'm not mistaken, he probably resorted to hypnotism. Otherwise, how could all of the 100 people possibly acknowledge him? Luo Xian declared confidently. Smiling lightly, sect leader Luo Huang replied, You said that he resorted to hypnotism, but what about Huang Shi? He also acknowledged Zhong Shi as well. In that duel, Zhong Xian even made Huang Jing desperately attempt to acknowledge him as his teacher, and the incident had made him a huge laughingstock. While the 100 people on the stage could have been hypnotized, how could a 4-star pinnacle master teacher be hypnotized that easily? Hearing his teacher's words, Luo Xian sneered coldly. Actually, if it wasn't for how ridiculous he was behaving, I'd not have seen through Zhong Shi's ploy. How could a 4-star pinnacle master teacher possessing a soul depth beyond 14? 0 possibly willingly acknowledge Zhong Shi, who wasn't even using impartation of heaven's will then, as his teacher? This in itself is a huge joke. As a fellow 4-star pinnacle master teacher, Luo Xian knew how formidable and proud experts of his class were. If Zhong Shi had used impartation of heaven's will, there might still be a possibility of it happening. After all, one would be forced to move contrary to one's will. However, to win over Huang Shi with just basic knowledge of cultivation in itself. Are you trying to fool a 3-year-old kid? He must have feigned it to please Zhong Shi. But in the end, his acting turned out to be too poor, and his plan backfired on him. Luo Xian harumphed. Even a 5-star master teacher couldn't possibly win over a 4-star master teacher by lecturing on basic knowledge. If Zhong Shi was truly capable of such a feat, it would mean that his capability already surpasses that of a 5-star master teacher. It's a rational argument. Is that the reason why you refused to attend his public lecture? Sect leader Luo Huang nodded in agreement. They had heard of Zhong Shi's public lecture, but they didn't think there was any need for them to attend it. It's just a lecture on basic knowledge, what is there to listen to? In the end, it all boils down to the same old things. I'm sure I could conduct one as well as his, so there's no point wasting my time there, Luo Xian replied. After which, he clasped his fist confidently and said, Teacher, I wish to attempt a breakthrough to consonant spirit realm right now. Can you guard me for a moment? Hihi, don't worry about it. Sect leader Luo Huang smiled. Thank you, teacher. Replying gratefully, Luo Xian sat on the floor, closed his eyes, and began cultivating. In truth, he could have made a breakthrough during the fight with Bai Jianghai as well, but he intentionally suppressed his cultivation. Once he achieved that breakthrough, his strength would soar. By then, he wouldn't have a legitimate reason to lose to the other party anymore. Gu. Energy flowed through his body, creating a sound reminiscent to the croaking of frogs. Luo Xian drove his cultivation swiftly in an attempt to break through the final wall blocking his path. Why can't I absorb any spiritual energy? But a moment later, he opened his eyes. No matter how hard he tried to draw in spiritual energy, it was completely ineffective. It was as if the spiritual energy in the air was dried out, rendering him incapable of cultivating. Sect leader, bad news. Just as he was perplexed by the bizarre situation, an anxious voice suddenly sounded, and Luo Xian's junior suddenly dashed into the room. For you to get so anxious, what's wrong? Sect leader Luo Huang's face darkened. It's Zhongsha's lecture. The junior hurriedly said. What's wrong with the lecture? Did he create a miracle with the basic knowledge of cultivation? Luo Xian shook his head. Following which, a frown appeared on his forehead, and he questioned, didn't teacher ban everyone from attending the lecture? Did you all sneak out? We didn't go to listen to the lecture. We only went to take a look. The junior's face turned crimson. The sect leader did order that no one was to listen to the lecture, but out of curiosity, they sneaked out and saw something that they should have never seen there. Take a look. What did you see then? Luo Xian asked. We saw in Zhongsha's lecture, spiritual energy was pouring into the square, and many who had been trapped in their bottleneck achieved a breakthrough during the lecture. The junior said. Spiritual energy was pouring into the square. How could that be possible? Luo Xian shook his head. Spirit gathering diction. This is an ability that only 5-star master teachers possess. How could a 4-star master teacher possibly influence the spiritual energy in the surroundings to such an extent, not to mention, while lecturing on basic knowledge? It's true. If you doubt my words, you can try sensing the spiritual energy in the surroundings. The junior quickly said. Spiritual energy? Gedung. Luo Xian suddenly recalled his inability to draw in spiritual energy a moment ago. Just as astonishment struck him, his teacher narrowed his eyes and began trembling uncontrollably. This is spirit gathering diction, 10 li of vacuum. Li equals 0, 5 kilometers, 10 li equals 5 kilometers, 10 li of vacuum? The two were taken aback. They had heard of spirit gathering diction. It was an ability that only 5-star master teachers possessed. What does 10 li of vacuum means? It's an ability that only 6-star master teachers possess. Sect leader Luo Huang's lips trembled as his eyes widened. It seemed like even he dared not believe this to be true. 6-star master teacher? Luo Xian and the junior trembled in astonishment. Rumor has it that 6-star master teachers are able to gather spiritual energy within a 10 li radius through their diction for those cultivating under their tutelage, forming a huge vacuum. Sect leader Luo Huang's teeth clattered together. Under such a situation, a cultivator would grow at a swift pace that is not any inferior to cultivation impartation. Zhongsha is only a 4-star master teacher, and the topic he is lecturing on is only basic knowledge of cultivation. How could the ability that only 6-star master teachers possess be triggered? Luo Xian was in disbelief. It was just a moment ago that he declared confidently that the other party had cheated in a knowledge impartation match. Yet, in the blink of an eye, the other party had drawn in spiritual energy from a 10 li radius for his lecture. Are you serious? No matter how he did it, hurry up and gather the members of our sect and have them attend the lecture. Otherwise, our fleeting cloud sect will lag behind the other sects, and it won't be long before we lose our title as the strongest power. Sect leader Luo Huang immediately stood up in a panic. A lecture that could create 10 li of vacuum would definitely be highly beneficial to one's future cultivation. And yet, their entire sect actually missed it. The loss they suffered from this oversight in decision was incalculable. It could be foreseen that the sects who went to listen to the lecture would surely find their overall fighting prowess soaring, and it would just be a matter of time before they surpassed their fleeting cloud sect. This was especially so for the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Most of the people who attended the lecture were from the Myriad Kingdom Alliance. The deeper understanding of cultivation they gained from the lecture had created a bright future for all of them. With this group of potential experts, in less than 20 years, the Myriad Kingdom Alliance could possibly soar to the peak of the 28 regional powers. It was for the ability to nurture many experts that high-tier master teachers were feared and respected. Attend the lecture. It's too late. Zhongshe is only lecturing for 2 hours and it's about to end already. Besides, even if we were to head there now, there's already no space for us. The junior said. No space. Sect leader Luo Huang's face paled, and he nearly fell to the ground. Indeed. Upon sensing spiritual energy disappearing from the surroundings, which cultivator wouldn't rush over to listen to the lecture? It was already too late for them. Our fleeting cloud sect. We lost a chance to climb to greater heights, just like that. Sect leader Luo Huang's body trembled in regret. If only they had attended the lecture, with the huge amount of resources their sect possessed, they would surely have risen the quickest. Surpassing Hongfeng Empire, where Hongshe came from, wouldn't be a dream. But now they could only sigh in lamentation. The opportunity had already slipped past their fingers, and no matter how they clawed at it, they couldn't possibly take it back. You said that you would be able to conduct a lecture as well as him? The more he thought about, the more stifled he felt. Thus, he turned his gaze over to Luo Xian. Luo Xian's body trembled, and he nearly burst into tears. He thought that the gap between him and Zhongshe wasn't too wide, and he could catch up with some diligence. Only at this instant did he realize that they were of completely different standing, and there was no basis of comparison at all. It was laughable that he even got ahead of himself and lost intentionally in the fight against Bai Jianghai so as to not offend Zhongshe in case he won the finals. Even if he had got into the finals, the only possible fate was to be crushed. It seems it wasn't hypnotism that all 100 people acknowledged him. He indeed possesses such capability. How could a person capable of employing 10 li of vacuum possibly lower his pride to hypnotize others just to win? Not to mention, a person with such capability could possibly win easily even without it. Huang Shi and the other cultivators were earnestly acknowledging Zhongshe as their teacher. And they noticed this fact way too late. The same sight was also occurring in the other sects who skipped the lecture. Upon learning that Zhongshe had managed to induce 10 li of vacuum through a lecture, everyone flew into a frenzy. Those who attended such a lecture would surely walk out of it with an incomparably solid foundation. Very few bottlenecks could stifle their cultivation in the future, and they would grow stronger swiftly. It could be said that this 2-hour lecture would determine their fate. No amount of gold or spirit stones could make up for this loss of opportunity. It seems like the rise of Myriad Kingdom Alliance is inevitable. It's time to redraw the map of the 28 regional powers. In the Alliance Head residence, Alliance Head Zhao stood up with his fists tightly clenched. He glanced at the young man lecturing on the stage with eyes reddened in agitation. Chapter 605, Capital of Huanyu Empire. Ever since inheriting the seat of the Alliance Head, he had been working hard to strengthen the alliance to protect and extend the borders of the empire. But the foundation of Myriad Kingdom Alliance was simply too weak. The probability of success of the task that he was undertaking was nearly zero. And yet, this impossibility was shattered with a single lecture from Zhongshe. The million Myriad Kingdom Alliance citizens listening to the lecture would become sturdy pillars propping up the rise of the empire. It would be impossible to stop the rise of Myriad Kingdom Alliance anymore. Zhongshe, thank you. Alliance Head Zhao bowed respectfully. This young man had brought new hope to the entire Myriad Kingdom Alliance. Using diction to draw in spiritual energy from the world for others to cultivate, is he really lecturing on fundamental knowledge of cultivation? I once thought that it was a waste of time to uncover the basics thoroughly. But from the looks of it now, I'm mistaken. Sorely mistaken. This basic knowledge forms the very foundation of cultivating. It's just like the foundation of a building, only with a strong foundation can it rise to greater heights. I've truly benefited immensely from this lesson. From today onward, Zhongshe is our half-teacher. If anyone intends to harm Myriad Kingdom Alliance, Zhongshe's homeland, in the future, we can't stand idly and watch anymore. The innumerable experts amidst the crowd thought and discussed similar things. After listening to Zhongshe's lecture, they were considered as half a student of his. Thus, they felt obliged to stand up for him in the future. Protecting one's core and going along with nature, these are the basics of cultivation. Alright, I'll stop my lecture here. With the lecture coming to an end, the young man on the stage flicked his wrist, and a brush appeared. Painting on midair, a massive phoenix soon appeared before everyone's sight. Leaping off the ground, the young man stepped onto the back of the phoenix and flew into the distance. This event would eventually go down in the annals of history. Myriad Kingdom Alliance Year 3372, Winter. 1,000,000 cultivators gathered to listen to Zhongshe's lecture, and Tenli of vacuum was induced in the course of the lecture. At the end of which, he soared into the skies on the back of a phoenix. The 1,000,000 cultivators kneeled down and addressed him as their teacher. White clouds floated over the backdrop of a blue sky. Several massive aerial spirit beasts whizzed across the sky, sending innumerable savage beasts and birds escaping chaotically in fear. On the back of a spirit beast, Zhongshen, who was in the midst of his meditation, slowly opened his eyes. It had been nearly a month since the public lecture in Myriad Kingdom City. In this period of time, they had spent nearly every day on the back of the aerial spirit beast, and mental exhaustion was starting to pile up. As they would be leaving their homeland for a long period of time, the traveling master teachers brought along their family and servants, and Hongshe had to prepare 10 whole spirit beasts to house everyone. None of these spirit beasts possessed cultivation lower than Transcendent Mortal 4 Dan, and they caused a huge ruckus no matter where they went, sending countless creatures darting away in fright. Throughout his journey, Zhongshen had been spending his time studying and cultivating. Not only did he reinforce his Zhenqi cultivation of Transcendent Mortal 4 Dan Pinnacle firmly, his soul cultivation even broke through the barrier to Transcendent Mortal 5 Dan, and he advanced all the way to Pinnacle tier. A soul cultivation of Transcendent Mortal 5 Dan amounted to a strength of 3,200,000 ding. Stacking his Zhenqi cultivation of 2 million ding on top of that, he was able to wield a maximum might of 5,200,000 ding. That was comparable to Transcendent Mortal 6 Dan Cosmos Bridge Realm Intermediate Stage Expert. Transcendent Mortal 6 Dan Cosmos Bridge Realm, 4 million ding at primary stage, 4,800,000 ding at intermediate stage, 5,600,000 ding at advanced stage, and 6,200,000 ding at pinnacle. With a might of 5,200,000 ding, Zhongshen's strength was near to that of an advanced stage cultivator. At his current strength, it would be difficult for even Hongshe to defeat him. The cultivation of 4-star master teacher usually ranged from Transcendent Mortal 2 Dan to 4 Dan. Transcendent Mortal 5 Dan Consonant Spirit Realm usually equated to half 5-star master teacher. Only upon reaching Transcendent Mortal 6 Dan Cosmos Bridge Realm would one be qualified as a 5-star master teacher. It hadn't been long since Hongshe had been promoted to a 5-star master teacher, and his cultivation realm was around Cosmos Bridge Realm primary stage. If Hongshe didn't exploit the unique ability of his current cultivation realm, he would be unlikely to be able to withstand even a single punch from Zhongshen. To gain the strength equivalent to a 5-star primary master teacher within 2 months of being promoted to a 4-star master teacher, only a monster like Zhongshen would be capable of such a feat. Zhongshen wasn't the only one whose cultivation increased by leaps and bounds. His students, Zhang Yang, Wang Ying, and the others, also witnessed significant growth in their cultivation as well. Zhao Ya and Lu Chong's departures made them treasure their time with Zhongshe even more. They had been cultivating diligently every single day, and with the huge pool of spirit stones Zhongshe gathered, their cultivation was increasing at an alarming rate on a daily basis. One by one, the 4 students managed to reach Transcendent Mortal Realm, and at this very moment, their cultivation levels had already stabilized at Transcendent Mortal 2 Dan Origin Energy Realm. Not only so, Zhongxian also reorganized the Heaven's Path battle techniques and imparted them to his students, thus inducing a massive rise in their fighting prowess. The one who had improved the slowest was probably butler Sun Qiong. This fellow didn't possess the slightest interest in cultivation, and as such, he would slack off the moment no eyes were on him. If not for Wang Ying supervising him, he would probably remain in the same cultivation realm for his entire life. Nevertheless, trapped on the back of a spirit beast, he had nothing better to do either. As such, he had also managed to advance from transcendent mortal 1 Dan prolonged longevity realm to 2 Dan origin energy realm pinnacle. At the current point, his cultivation was still higher than Wang Ying, who was the strongest among the remaining students. The reason for his rapid improvement despite his indolence wasn't due to his talent. Rather, he had consumed a part of Mo Huansheng's soul, which allowed him to inherit the other party's comprehension of cultivation. With this serving as his foundation, and factoring in Zhongxian's guidance and the seemingly endless supply of spirit stones for his use, his progress could be said to be slow already. It should have been a joyous occasion that everyone was making progress in their training, but the current Zhongxian couldn't find the mood to celebrate. This was because the 600 or so spirit stones which he had taken from the fleeting cloud sect and other powers had just completely run dry. Zhang Yang, Sun Qiong, and the others didn't consume many of them. The culprit behind this incident was mainly Zhongxian himself. Back then, in order to hasten the maturing of the 9 Hearts Lotus, Zhongxian expended around 200 to 300 middle-tier spirit stones. After which, he gave a portion to the departing Lu Chong and spent another huge bunch to advance his soul cultivation to consonant spirit realm. It could be considered a blessing that the 600 middle-tier spirit stones lasted them until now. Rubbing his glabella, Zhongxian thought, looks like I'll have to use the high-tier spirit stone for my future cultivation. So far, he hadn't used the high-tier spirit stone that he'd received from the master-teacher tournament yet as he couldn't bear to use it. But now that his supply of middle-tier spirit stone had run dry, he had no other choice. Zhongshe, we're about to reach Huanyu capital. Just as Zhongxian was about to take the high-tier spirit stone to take a look, Hongshe suddenly walked over. For this journey, Hongshe chose to share a ride with him, and along the journey, Zhongxian helped solve some of the problems he was facing in his cultivation. In a sense, this was his way of compensating the other party for destroying his artifacts. Naturally, this was all done in the name of Yangshe. In any case, the other party seemed to possess absolute trust to this teacher of his, so there was no harm using the latter's name. After receiving Zhongxian's pointers, Hongshe enjoyed significant improvement in his cultivation. At the same time, his respect for this young master teacher also deepened. The capital. Zhongxian stood up and walked over to the window. A massive city came into his sight. Pitch-black city walls were embedded into the earth as though a thick iron mail. Countless elegant buildings rose all the way into the distant sky, and from afar, it resembled an undulating mountain range. They bore testimony to the long history of the city. Huanyu capital has more than 10,000 years of history behind it. The founding emperor, Yi Huanyu, led 4 of his brothers to conquer the lands, thus eventually forming this immense empire. Hongshe glanced downward, and both graveness and awe were reflected in his eyes. The eastern end of the capital is connected to the verdant mountain, whereas the western end is connected to the dragon-scaled river. From afar, it looks no different from a sprawling giant. Zhongxian lowered his glance to examine the city. Just as Hongshe had said, the capital was indeed majestic. It extended for hundreds of kilometers. As though a gigantic fortress, just the sight of it created an indestructible image in the minds of onlookers. Even though there was no complicated formation set up around the capital, it seemed to blend in with nature, creating an unblemished and soothing atmosphere. Huanyu Empire Master Teacher Pavilion's Pavilion Master Wei Jiang is my teacher, a 5-star pinnacle master teacher and transcendent mortal 8 Dan pinnacle expert. The Emperor, Yi Wentian, has also reached transcendent mortal 8 Dan as well, Hongshe explained. 5-star pinnacle master teacher? Transcendent mortal 8 Dan? Zhongxian's mouth twitched. Upon reaching transcendent mortal 5 Dan consonant spirit realm, one's soul and body would be harmonized together as one, and one's strength would be brought to whole new heights. One's enhanced soul would also significantly increase one's comprehension of cultivation as well. Beyond this realm is Cosmos Bridge Realm. Cosmos Bridge Realm, a bridge that connects one with the world, creating a unique synergy between man and nature. Even without cultivating consciously, spiritual energy would flow along the bridge into one's body and nourish it, thus inducing a constant rise in one's cultivation. At this realm, one's zhenqi or soul would grow at a rapid pace. Eventually, one would gain the power to move mountains and displace oceans. After this realm is Transcendent Mortal 7 Dan Perfect Harmonization Realm. Perfect Harmonization Realm, the unification of everything into one entity. One's energy would become even purer and aligned with nature. At the same time, one's soul would also grow stronger as well. Following which is Transcendent Mortal 8 Dan Ethereal Treading Realm. At this level, one's zhenqi and soul would enjoy a massive growth spurt. More importantly, one would gain some control over the laws of nature, allowing one to step on thin air. In other words, one would be able to rise up into the skies. However, horizontal motion is still too difficult at this realm, so it couldn't be considered flight yet. To think that Huanyu Empire Master Teacher Pavilion's Pavilion Master would actually be an expert of this caliber, just the thought of this in itself was frightening. Even though Zhongxian had improved greatly during this period of time, he was still far from matching up to such experts. But of course, having grasped the red dust heaven ascending steps, even if he found himself on the losing end of a fight, he could still escape into the skies safely. I've already had someone report our arrival to the Master Teacher Pavilion, and someone should be fetching us soon. After introducing Huanyu Empire's Emperor and the Master Teacher Pavilion's Pavilion Master, Hongsha chuckled. While the 28 regional powers were significantly weaker than Huanyu Empire, the Master Teacher Tournament still held some weight in the empire. Otherwise, Hongsha, a 5-star Master Teacher, wouldn't have been dispatched to host the event Chio Chio Chio. Roar roar roar. But as soon as he was done saying those words, a series of beast calls sounded, and around a dozen gigantic aerial spirit beasts flew over toward the group. These aerial spirit beasts weren't too large in size, and a single figure could be seen standing on top every single one of them. Chuckling lightly, Hongsha said, "All right, the escorting party is here. Later on, they'll lead us straight to the royal palace." But halfway through his words, an impassive voice suddenly sounded in the air. "Hong Qian, it has been long since we last met. It is unfortunate, but it seems like you came at a bad time. I advise you to turn around and leave immediately." Chapter 606, Obstruction Came at a Bad Time? Leave. Zhongxian frowned. Rather than welcoming, this group seemed to be provoking them instead. If they were here to escort them in, why on earth would they ask them to leave as soon as they met? The other master teachers on the back of other spirit beasts also came out of their rooms, curious to see what was going on. They wanted to see who was so audacious as to speak to Hongsha in such a manner. Fengyu. Hearing those words, Hongsha frowned. "You're right." The man on the spirit beast that was leading the entire group chuckled lightly in response. At this moment, both sides were only several hundred meters apart, and they could already clearly see the appearance of the other. The other party was a 50-year-old elder dressed in a long, golden robe. His grey beard drifted along with a slight breeze. From his appearance, the other party resembled an enlightened sage. "I came under the invitation of Huanyu Empire and the Master Teacher Pavilion, and naturally, I've no reason to leave. If Brother Feng wishes to leave, I don't mind sending you off," Hongsha said. During which, he sent a telepathic message to Zhongxian to explain the situation. This Feng Yu is the Pavilion Master of Fengyuan Empire Master Teacher Pavilion, and the both of us have never been on good terms before. While the 28 powers under Hongfeng Empire were conducting the Master Teacher Tournament, they were doing the same as well. Fengyuan Empire? One of the 4 great vassal states, Hongfeng Empire? Zhongxian asked. In the 1-month journey, while Zhongxian had devoted most of his time to cultivating, he would have occasional chats with this 5-star master teacher, and from the latter, he gained a rough understanding of Huanyu Empire. Huanyu Empire was a Tier 2 empire, and under it were 4 vassal states, Hongfeng Empire, Fengyuan Empire, Qianfeng Empire, and Zhuyu Empire. These 4 states were conferred to the 4 brothers who fought alongside founding Emperor Yi Huanyu, and while they were said to be of equal standing to Huanyu Empire, their standing was slightly lower than the former. The 4 great vassal states had many smaller empires under them. Take for example Hongfeng Empire, where Hongshe came from. It governed the 28 regional powers, namely Myriad Kingdom Alliance, Fleeting Cloud Sect, and so on. The other 3 vassal states were also in the same position. If Zhongxian were to use the knowledge from his previous life to classify this structure, Huanyu Empire would be the entire country, while Hongfeng, Fengyuan, and the other vassal states were provinces. The 28 regional powers would be cities, conferred kingdoms like Shenyuan Kingdom would be towns, and Tier 1 and Tier 2 kingdoms would be villages. Just like Hongfeng Empire, the other vassal states were also conducting the Master-Teacher Tournament to pick out the individuals who were qualified to enter the Cleansing Lake. I thought that the members of Huanyu Empire's royalty would be here to pick us up, but it seems like they managed to catch hold of the news of our arrival and intercepted the news. As Master-Teacher pavilions of equal standing, a certain degree of rivalry is unavoidable. I fear that they bear hostile intentions. Hongshe frowned. Zhongxian nodded in agreement. Considering how rude the other party was, they were unlikely to be here to have a friendly chat. And as expected, while the duo was speaking, Master-Teacher Feng Yu, who was standing opposite to them, bellowed loudly, "I tried speaking kindly to you, but you just choose not to listen. Hongfeng Empire is the furthest away from Huanyu Empire, and you came late as well, so there may be some things you are unaware of. Since that's the case, allow me to fill you in. While the slots for the Cleansing Lake haven't changed, Crown Prince Yi Qian of the royal family suddenly requires 3 more slots, and thus, we've had to cut our numbers. In other words, your group has already lost its opportunity to enter the Cleansing Lake. I'll advise you to return now rather than embarrass yourself inside. Requires 3 more slots." Hongshe frowned. Just like the Yinyang Lake, the Cleansing Lake also had a strict restriction on the number of people who could enter it. However, the slots were decided on beforehand, so how could Hongfeng Empire lose its slots just because it came late? How could a respected crown prince steal the slots of a vassal state? That's right. Why don't you all report to Hongyuan Master Teacher Academy first? There's no point in staying here for you anyway. Feng Yu smiled. We'll decide for ourselves whether there's any point in staying here or not, so Fengshe need not worry for us. Knowing that the other party was surely up to no good for obstructing them here, Hongshe couldn't be bothered to waste his breath. Thus, waving his hands, he turned around and instructed, "Control your spirit beasts well, we'll be heading straight for the Master Teacher Pavilion first." These aerial spirit beasts were rented from the Beast Hall and driven by its personnel. Hualala. Under the Beast Tamer's control, the spirit beasts immediately formed a line, ready to advance at any moment. "Hong Qian, aren't you being a little too rude here? I came here to inform you of the matter kindly, and not only did you not reciprocate my favor, you even chose to snub me and leave. What do you mean by this?" Feng Yu's eyebrows shot up. "I'll ask Teacher and His Majesty personally regarding the issue concerning the slot." Hongshe waved his hands. Huala. The aerial spirit beasts immediately spread their wings and attempted to bypass the other party by soaring to a greater altitude. "You just want to do things the hard way." Chen Mo. Seeing the other party refusing to heed his advice, Feng Yu narrowed his eyes. He turned around and issued a command. "Yes," replied the young man behind him. With a flick of his wrist, an ancient zither appeared in his palm, and pulling on it lightly, a melodious tune floated in the air. Tri-eyeing, tri-eyeing. The melody was constantly alternating between a high note and a low note. The tune was refined, and the melody sounded pleasant to the ear. What is he doing with the zither? I've no idea. Not only did the zither lack the slightest hostile intentions, it was even gentle. It was extremely comfortable to the ears, and this left the Hongfeng Empire group perplexed. Since the other party traveled all the way here to obstruct them, there was no reason for the other party to let them pass so easily. Yet, when they tried to leave, all the other party did was to have one of their members play a perfectly ordinary melody on his zither. What were they up to? Demonic tunists did possess the ability to launch an offense on one's soul via sound, but for them to be injured by such gentle music? Impossible. More importantly, while their group wasn't exceptionally powerful, every single of them was a 4-star pinnacle master teacher, and Hong Shu, a 5-star master teacher, was present here as well. To influence everyone's psyche with music here felt like an impractical move. Wait, this offense isn't directed toward us, it's directed toward the spirit beast. At this moment, Hong Shu finally came to a realization, and his face darkened. Spirit beasts. Taken aback, everyone quickly turned their sights to the beast tamers driving the aerial spirit beasts, only to see a livid expression on each of their faces. Not bad, you sure realized it swiftly. Indeed, Chen Mo's void tune of heavens possesses the ability to hypnotize spirit beasts and prevent them from advancing any further. In other words, as long as the music continues playing, you'll be unable to advance even the slightest inch. Feng Yu chuckled softly. Void tune of heavens? Hong Shu tried to drive the spirit beast beneath him, but it seemed as though the connection between him and the spirit beast was severed. All it was capable of at the moment was to remain afloat in midair. It was as if someone had put a cage around the spirit beasts, preventing them from going any further. And unable to move any further, they wouldn't be able to enter the capital or the royal palace. Feng Yu, what are you up to? Enraged, Hong Shu glanced at Feng Yu coldly. Nothing much. I just want you to accompany me here for a single day. Feng Yu smiled lightly before turning around to issue another instruction. Chen Mo, continue playing the zither here. Don't allow them to advance a single inch forward. Yes, the young man known as Chen Mo replied as his fingers danced around the zither, producing a beautiful melody. Humph, do you think that you can stop me with this? Not expecting the other party to resort to such forceful measures, Hong Shu's eyebrows shot up in displeasure. Emulating a sword through his finger, he flicked his forefinger lightly. Woo! A piercing shrill echoed. A surge of sword chi was shot from the tip of Hong Shu's finger, headed straight for Chen Mo's zither. With the destruction of the zither, the melody would stop, and the bindings on the spirit beast would be dispelled. But before the sword chi could even reach Wang, a reverberation sounded. A huge protective barrier had appeared before Chen Mo, rendering Hong Shu's offensive ineffective. It's a formation. The people on the dozen spirit beasts have coordinated with one another to set up a defensive barrier to protect Chen Mo. Given the long distance, it'll be difficult for us to break the barrier. Zhong Xian shook his head. He had been perplexed as to why Feng Yu would bring so many people over. After all, as fellow master teachers, it was unlikely that a battle would break out. It seemed like this was where his true intentions lay. All of these people were likely to be formation masters, and they must be carrying some object on them. Using the spirit beasts as the formation flags, they succeeded in setting up a defensive formation around Chen Mo. If not for the distance, putting aside Hong Shu, even Zhong Xian would be able to break the barrier easily with a single punch. The distance of several hundred meters was a difficult problem to solve. From such a distance, even the long-range sword chi would be unable to deal much damage. Not to mention, the other party seemed to be well prepared, so it was unlikely that they would get a chance at stopping Chen Mo's zither. This was also what made demonic tunists fearsome. Physical barriers meant nothing to them as long as their melody could get through. This was probably also the basis of the other party's confidence. Damn it. Hong Shu gritted his teeth tightly. He was also able to deduce this much. They were in a bad plight. Under the effects of the melody, they were trapped at an altitude of several thousand meters away from ground, unable to descend or leave. The part regarding the slots should be true, and the results are likely to be out by today. He probably intends to keep us here to stop us from vying for those slots, Hong Shu said. That's very likely. Zhong Xian nodded. Actually, this matter wasn't too difficult to guess, and master teachers specialized in noticing even the most minor of details. If they couldn't deduce this much, they might as well knock their heads onto a wall and fall dead. The capital might look near from here, but if we were to go proceed ahead by foot, it would take at least half a day. Besides, we're in midair right now. Given that our spirit beasts are unable to move at all, we're completely trapped here. What should we do? Hongsha began to panic. Once he lost those slots, he wouldn't be able to get it back even if he were to wreak havoc with the Fengyu. But they were stuck in midair, and they couldn't reach the other parties zither either. Were they really doomed to watch as the slots for the cleansing lake slipped by their fingers? Actually, there's a very simple way to resolve this issue. Zhongxian smiled mysteriously. Simple? How can this matter be resolved simply? The other party's words left Hongsha stunned. Our spirit beasts are immobile, and we're too far to reach them as well. You can't expect us to fly over to destroy the zither. Fly over? That would be way too troublesome. Zhongxian shook his head. Turning around, he instructed, everyone, block the ears of your spirit beasts. All right. Even though everyone had no idea what Zhongxian was up to, they still nodded their heads and carried out his instructions. They had a deep trust toward this champion of the master-teacher tournament. Soon, they managed to plug the ears of the spirit beasts on their side. Now that all preparations were done, Zhongxian chuckled lightly as he turned to face the enemy. You said that there's a simple way to resolve this matter. Despite your young age, you sure speak arrogantly. Hongsha, is this your student? Why do you seem to be regressing as time passes? Your juniors don't seem to know the meaning of etiquette at all. It's basic manners to remain silent while your seniors are talking. Hearing the words between the duo, Fengyu sneered coldly. He was just about to reprimand the other party when the young man opposite to him opened his mouth, and a sound echoed into the surroundings. Moo. Hoo. 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 Before they could even react, the spirit beasts beneath Fengyu and the others began a free-fall journey all the way to the ground. The heck, what is going on? HHH. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories,